So yeah, Fischer just his uncompromising play, and just total confidence. I mean, obviously he had the skill to back up his confidence, but you just have to be confident because that'll allow you to outplay your opponent. You can't be reserved if you're trying to win. At stronger level play. Some people maybe club level, they want to be defensive and just try to exploit their opponent's mistakes. But yeah, at higher level play, I mean, your opponent will be able to attack you if you just sit around for the most part. You'll get hit by they'll get a strong initiative. Okay, so we have Fischer Taimanov, and you just get a sense. You don't have to understand every single move. We're going to try to though. But again, I want you to just get understand kind of the spirit of his play. And you'll see it's actually interesting in terms of the openings he played. So he loved the King's Indian as well as the King's Indian attack with white. King's Indian, same thing, black or white. King's Indian defense is black. And then he plays against the Taimanov, with his bastard Kobas, but yeah, against the Taimanov with E6 Sicilian against Taimanov. He plays in a very interesting way against that. And as for the King's Indian, it was smart because he plays it once, plays it twice, and the third time he does a Grunfeld. So he's like, okay, I know you're ready for my King's Indian. So okay, you can go prepare against it. And now I'm playing a D5 instead of D6 and a Grunfeld. So yeah, I guess let's just start with the first. The second game, funny enough, what I was going to say is the second game, 89 move, amazing win, knight versus bishop scenario with an outside pass pawn to keep the knight away from it. But I just opened up a book yesterday with my students and I grabbed this puzzle and it was taken from the game. And then I randomly was looking through the Fischer games yesterday. I'm like, oh, that's the exact same game that it's from. So it's kind of fun. You see the game.
Yeah, I played Taimanov a lot. E6. I think I used to play open and close and Narstar, but I find that they're very heavy on dairy. So I played Taimanov a lot. I've gotten good results. Most of my upsets were black Taimanov.
Yeah, it's if I'm going to play something, say if I'm going to play something other than Dragon, which I've done in the past, I would play that because it's real nice. You get that bishop b4 pin in sometimes, but the way Fischer plays against it is very interesting. I mean, you could still use his openings today, like the Fischer Sozin bishop c4 stuff. I think is still pretty popular. Obviously, King's Indian attack is still very popular. I think he popularized that a lot. Petrosian has an amazing win with that as well, playing white with King's Indian attack. So here's King's Indian defense, and we'll take a look at least one or two of each from each opening. Okay, so Fischer has black. And this time, yeah, this first one is the King's Indian defense. It says orthodox variation. And sometimes they'll come up with, chessgames.com will come up with like random names. Sometimes they'll mix it up, whatever it finds in its database, but then it'll transpose sometimes. All right. So anyway, D4, knight of 6.
What's the name for this game?
The name of it? Does it have a name? Doing me like a pun? There's no pun for this game. Like sometimes they'll have a pun on it.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah, like, it'll be like if it's game of the day. No, it's just round one. Okay, so we have G6. So as I mentioned, he plays Grunfeld in the other one. Now allowing E4, this is going to be King's Indian. No D5 now. But in the other, in the last time he plays with black, he goes for D5 to mix it up. The Grunfeld, which he liked a lot, but definitely King's Indian was one of his trademarks. E4, so we got D6. Not really. I think you can allow E5, but he's like, all right, now E5 is less palatable. But there is a line, I think, where you allow it and you kick back. But yeah, he's like, this is the main line. D6, knight comes out, castles. And are you guys all pretty familiar with the King's Indian? The ideas behind the King's Indian? For both sides?
Yeah.
Well, I noticed that I think that black uses his pawns on his king side to try to attack.
Right. Once he makes the pawn chain, right?
Yeah.
If it and that's the kind of typical King's Indian type positions you'll see where black gets an E5 and white bypasses.
Is this a dragon or this is a dragon?
Dragon would be out of a E4 C5 opening. That would be.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Although I mean, it might sort of become dragon-like if certain trades happen, right? But yeah, fundamentally this will be a King's Indian, and then once you push. Yeah, there could be transpositions into other openings too, but like if C5 happens instead of E5, but this will be pure King's Indian stuff. And the knight will move away, even H5, usually like this, and then F5 will be played. So basically, once that gets locked up, black's going to go to the king side, the pawn chain will be here, and white will have play on the queen side and usually play for like B4, C5, stuff like that. So yeah, that's some of the main ideas, but not to say that it has to get locked up, but a lot of times it does. White tries to gain that space, but the space is not everything, as you'll see. Okay, so bishop E2, E5. castles. And yeah, this is just the line, you could look into it, but this pawn's not really hanging. You know, because white's hitting this pawn too, so it ends up being fine for black. White doesn't want to take that. So in theory, is, you know, just castle and then guards. A lot of people like knight bd7 as well, but this is just very direct because you're putting pressure on the d pawn and really provoking them to push. That's the point. You want them to push. Knight comes to e7, bishop goes to d2, knight goes to
Is
e8.
this the Mar Plata variation?
The what?
This is Mar Plata, right?
I don't know. I mean, yeah, again, there are a lot of names for stuff, but this is pretty much, you see how it's, does it say classical? It says orthodox. I think this is pretty much your classical. It's basically classical. Are you saying with knight c6?
Yeah, do you know Mar Plata?
Don't think so, no.
Okay.
But this is pretty
Like,
much
it's like
your
a
basically this
famous
is classical
variation.
variant. Knight f3, bishop e2. Sometimes they'll play bishop e2 first instead of knight
Oh,
f3
yeah.
for
No,
transpositional. But
it's
basically,
in the
this is,
normal.
yeah, this is just pure classical version. Only thing is
Yeah,
if you go knight
no,
b7.
Bishop E3 is there, I think. Yeah. So, there was a tournament, I think around 1960, and Miguel Naidov played this variation, and the Mar del Plata one, similar one, the idea being
Oh,
knight
Mar de
B7 left.
Oh, okay, from in Argentina.
Yeah, yeah. And
Oh, yeah,
after that,
Knight Arf ended up. Yeah, Knight Arf was Argentinian.
yeah, now you remember? Yeah, and the popularity skyrocketed. Everybody started playing it, and
Because
the
he
game
played, yeah,
after
he
that.
played an amazing. Actually, I think the study that we did once on the pawn breaks. You guys, I think I've sent it to you guys mostly, right? The pawn break one. So we have Fischer playing a brilliant King's Indian against, I think it was against Korchnoi. And then we also have that game I think that you're talking about. Both of them are just great kingside attacks. So yeah, we have, it kind of feels like a French actually, you know, like in the classical French, black is knight f6, the pawn pushes to e5, the knight gets chased from f6 to d7. Now it's just a different pawn chain, but the knight's getting chased to e7, and now the break is f5, and you know, it's just about where the pawn chain is. So speaking of pawn breaks, right? So we have our pawns going this way, we're going to go for our f5 break. In a French, black's pawns are going
Yeah,
this
but
way, and they
white
go for the
doesn't
c5,
usually
and they're going
have.
for, it's just a different direction that you want to break on. Light squares, dark squares, different, and that's going to determine generally where your play is going to be. What's that?
Yeah, but
Sorry, you broke up.
yeah, but does white generally doesn't have c4 in the classical French, right? French.
No, it's more about which direction you're aiming. So it'd be like if you're aiming this way with f5. So it'd be kind of like, it'd be similar to, no, so this would be the equivalent of playing f4 a day, right? It would be like if you had this pawn chain.
No.
But
I'm asking.
I'm saying it's, you know what I mean? It's on the other side of the board, right? But it'd be kind of like how
No.
white has f4, e5, and d4, and then black would be hitting with d5. So it's just kind of, I mean, it's going to lead to different kinds of play, but the idea of of seeking your pawn break at the end of your pawn chain, basically. Oh, what are you saying then?
Oh, like here white has c4, right? And you compared this to the French defense, but like generally in the French, in the classical, white doesn't go c4, right? Or does white?
Oh, you're not to compare like mirror image. You're saying just in general, if it's a French, should white go c4?
No, I'm asking like generally white does not go c4.
Yeah, in a French, like in an actual, right? I'm just talking about the reverse, but you mean in a French, when white's like this, you're saying that they wouldn't go c4, right?
Oh wait, you're talking about the color. Oh, sorry, you're talking
No,
about.
I'm just saying. I was just not even like to delve into the French too much, but just to show that it's yeah. In the French, it's not here, but in the French, your pawn chain is like this, and you play c5. And in this version, your pawn chain is like this. So the point is, but in the French, no, in the French, usually you will play c3, not c4 to support. That's more like in a Caracan, you do usually not in a French, usually maybe later, but very rarely. Yeah. Okay, so now it's important to understand that structure, understand the different kinds of play you get based on these pawn chains, right? So again, like that pawn chain study or the pawn break study covers that a lot. And you see a couple of games like this where and Fischer plays for f5. Interestingly, in that game, Fischer actually played c5 first to stop this counterplay by white. But here he's just going all out. He's like, I'm just going to get my break in. And yeah, this type of stuff, as you said, the Najdorf game, probably some of these games, the world saw this, and certainly they popularized the King's Indian. You're like, oh wow, Fischer won the world champion, lead up to the world championship, playing this stuff. So it must be good. Again, it's risky. It's not, the computer probably doesn't love it for black, but it's very aggressive. And it leads to, you can outplay your opponent, understand it better than them. So he's allowing the knight to come in, right? So the knight sees a hole. Says, oh, theoretically,
He
that's
doesn't
a
have
hole.
choice.
I want to come into E6. But he says,
Oh,
you know
yeah,
what? Go
but-
ahead. Come on in.
Does he have a choice?
Don't you have what? A choice?
Does he? Like, is there any way in which he can avoid 96 without giving her the bishop? Because that's an important bishop in the King's Indian.
Without getting rid of
fighting
that. You're saying like to allow, but not to give up this bishop?
Yeah.
Well, given that he played F5 so early, I don't know if he wants to play F5 that early, I don't know if he can really avoid it, because he would have probably had to play H6 then to stop it, right? And so he didn't stop it. But then now that he didn't stop it, what do you do? Because otherwise you let him come in and he's gonna, no matter what, if you don't stop that, he's gonna hit at least 2 of the 3, and then he's gonna get your bishop. So which one would you rather give up? Often this bishop's not great if the pawn's locking it, but now which one? I mean, this bishop's guarding your king. Does this bishop have potential on G7 now? I mean, if you're willing to, are you thinking whether you're going to give away trade off the C8 bishop or the G7 bishop? Or how else would you, because otherwise you would need to have like knight C7 or something like that, or you don't have a knight move to control it. Or, I mean, if you really wanted to, let's see, what was the last move? He just came in immediately after F5 in exchange. Although I like this, I mean, look, this is very aggressive. There's a Silman puzzle about that, about which way should you take back? He's like, no, do not take back with the piece, take back with the pawn. It looks scary, but if you take back with the bishop, for example, there's in that opening, out of that opening, there was like knight D2 to E4, probably similar here. So the point is that you're letting them blockade the light squares. This is way more aggressive, and you can launch your pawns forward. And as you can see, but Uday, did you mean like, is there a way to preserve your C8 bishop and maybe let him take your G7 bishop?
No, I mean, like, is there a way to not let the knight go at all? There isn't, right?
Yeah,
Letting the
no,
knight
no,
come into-
Yeah, basically you'd have to play
No,
H6,
wait.
but
Rook F6. Rook F6.
oh, right now? Oh, right. I see what you mean.
You get a
Yeah,
pawn.
I suppose you could have done that. Let's see. In the game, I guess, I think he wants him. He's
Oh,
like,
yeah,
look, it looks like he's winning a pawn. It's very messy because then the B pawn gets taken. But I guess he wants him to go there. I mean, let's see.
Yeah,
Let's say he had gone Rook F6. That's a good question, though. If he had gone Rook F6, is Bishop H5 annoying? Slightly annoying?
Oh,
I think he wanted to just, maybe that's annoying. No, he's not doing anything. I don't think that's that annoying because he's not going to come into F7. But yeah, I think he was just provoking the knight. I think he's like, go ahead. I'm not afraid of the knight. And yeah, he's giving up his light squared bishop, which is true. It's usually important. But then again, think of it like this. Think of it in terms of time, like we did the first one we recorded actually on YouTube was the one about development, right? And remember we were talking about lines like where they make multiple moves of one piece. You're like, all right, you know what? Come on in. You spent 1, 2, 3 moves with your knight. Well, I did play H6, but then I get my bishop out in one fell swoop. So I make a capture, you make a capture. We both spend a move on a capture, but in doing so, yeah, I've gotten rid of my bishop. I've effectively solved my development problem with my bishop, right? Unless I'm looking to like play F4 and get the bishop out. But I think he's kind of like, look, just come in. You're going to come in anyway, probably. Just do it. And I'm going to try to win it back. Does that make sense? But it sort of solves this development issue. Often the bishop does just hang out on C8, especially in a closed version. But this is a little different because it's not, it's not like where there's E4, D5 pawns. It's once Fischer takes back the G pawn, it's become really dynamic. And what I was getting at, Uday, when I was asking about the bishop, you probably would want to preserve your G7 bishop, especially when it's not locked, because that bishop can unleash it at a moment's notice. Maybe you can get a knight coming to E5, and you have a lot of good stuff. But you want that bishop, 1, to preserve your king, like to guard your king, and 2, you want to be able to go maybe bishop diagonal pressure, maybe bishop E5 or D4. There's a cool tall game like that, but that bishop can come to life for sure and defend. So yeah, in terms of which bishop, but yeah, he's like, look, I'm just gonna win your pawn right now, and I can handle that, move my king over. So now she is looking at B7, C6, keep the pieces out, and I suppose if he ends up getting C5, and you have the option of bypassing too if you want. Okay, here comes the bishop to wants to go to F7, and queen just takes. So there, you see, there's that bishop H5 idea again, and arguably, maybe she takes on E6
what's
now
the
to
point
not,
on that idea? I didn't
maybe not
understand it
allow
when you
bishop
said it.
F7, even though it's not the end of the world. What's that?
What's the idea behind bishop f5? Like, I don't know, h5. I don't understand it when you first.
I mean, he's trying to probe. He's, I guess, trying to argue, look, you've opened up your light squares a bit, and I'm trying to exploit those. So I've traded off, how you trade off your light squared bishop, and now my light squared bishop, uncontested bishop again, wants to come in. I don't know if I'd even be that afraid of bishop f7 check, but it's kind of like, do I really need that move? Do I need him to do that? Let's say he moves, he's gonna have to deal with that bishop for a while. So he figured, hey, let's just get rid of this. But he does give him the b pawn, although the queen is not that great on b7 either. So you could see how Fischer's initiative starts to brew up here. And yeah, so what if he gives his opponent the bishop pair? Those knights can become really strong. Mostly it's about your center though, right? That center is becoming very strong. We'll resolve the issue with the queen over here, but he is going to end up doing the typical thing you do when there's a queen on. As I said, Fischer often liked to take the b2 pawn in the poison pawn variation, but here he's allowing his opponent to take b7. But what's the typical thing you want to do to treat this scenario when the queen's on b7? How do you want to deal with that queen?
Would you move the knight at e to f6?
You're gonna move the knight, yeah, and then once you move the knight, either, yeah, probably f6, and then once you move the knight, what are you gonna do about the queen? And we're already guarding c6, everything's safe. Yeah, we want to deal with the queen, but how are we gonna deal with it? Usually whenever she comes into b7 or b2, what's the idea to usually boot the queen out?
Is it b8? Rook
Right,
b8.
you want to go, and also there's a tempo game, as you said, Lynn, right? So basically, I mean, yeah, so he's like, you know what? He's okay with the queen taking d7. But look at his initiative. All of a sudden, knight comes out, rook comes to b8, rook f8. And no need for rook a b8, I'd say, because then, the queen takes and maybe runs back to e3. No need to give him the other pawn. But then you get this pawn back. So you're not even down anything. Oh, wait, we're up a pawn rather, because we ended up taking the e6 pawn, right? So we didn't actually give him a pawn back, right? So we just got this one on b2. We traded the b for b pawn, but now the rook's invading the territory. We have a tempo on their bishop, and so things are just looking pretty good. I mean, there's only one thing, just in general, you'd want to think about. In general, like for taking this risk, right? Pushing in the center. What's the only drawback for Fischer? Not right now, but just something you might be worried about with the black pieces.
Is it the pin with the queen and the king?
The pin where?
The queen and the king.
Which one? Which pin?
For black. Like the light square bishop can pin the queen and the king.
Oh yeah, so just the fact that the king and the queen are on this diagonal, the a2 g8 diagonal. So there is that, but that speaks to the larger issue, which is some weaknesses. Like white are more solid. Like their king is definitely more protected than Fischer's king. Right. At the same time, doesn't matter. Is it exploitable? I mean, maybe in the future, but he's got nicely placed pieces over here. There are no white pieces that, I tried bishop h5. It didn't do anything. It was feckless, right? All this stuff, allowing the pawn coming into e6 kind of opened stuff up, but he didn't do anything with it. And arguably, you'd also have d5 to meet that, or you just move your king. But yeah, if you go c5, you'd probably go d5 right now. Yeah, you have this massive center coming. But yeah, so he has some looseness though. You could kind of feel that, right? The rook is undefended on a8. Both rooks are undefended, actually. There is some diagonal stuff. You're gonna have to move your king. Yeah, your king's more open, but at the same time, it's double-edged because we can attack their king, even though our king's, by having our king be more open, even though their king is more closed, like we can still attack them on the half-open G file. So it's very double-edged, right? Does that make sense? We have the knights that can hop around. They have the bishop pair. We have the knights. As you can see, the bishop pair is not really doing that much right now, right? And the knights are ready to come in to attack. Maybe even end up playing f4, knight f5 and stuff. You have things like that. Knights are going to swarm though, maybe like knight g6, h4. So yeah, g2 can certainly be a target, a focal point. We can certainly put rooks on the g file, maybe double on the b file. So a lot of play here. There's a lot of play. But yeah, technically black does have a lot of looseness in the position. Can you guys kind of feel that? Like d6. Someone's asked me before, oh, why do you, or actually in that Fischer game, say when he played c5, similar position, why, should white take on c6? And you see the same kind of thing where it's like, yeah, it feels a little loose, but at the same time, white has lost the space advantage and black has dynamism. So it's a trade-off. But black is playing for a win. Black is willing to accept that. We want to win, right? So we take that risk. We take what we, we take that calculated risk, and we
It
take
looks a
moments to
little
play for an
loose,
advantage.
but it looks loose, but it seems like he has all the squares sewed up. That's why white can't advance that much.
Exactly. That's the thing. Yeah. I mean, like, it's more like a long-term thing. Let's say white's okay and weathers the storm. Maybe in the long run, he might exploit that somehow. Like maybe if he gets pressure on d6. But even then, you have like d5. You have options. But yeah, maybe he opens up the bishop pair and hits some weaknesses. But that's very remote possibility. But you see the initiative is real. As I said, it's really brewing up. The rook's invading on the second rank, hitting the bishop. And he's going to, and he plays e4. Now we're unleashing that bishop that we really wanted on g7. And again, it hits the diagonal and can come to e5 or d4, right? We can stick, as I mentioned about the knights, the knight might reroute to like e5. So then the other rook might go to f8. I think it does end up on f8. Can lift, just kind of guard the pawns. So it's very dynamic. It's like, yeah, so theoretically some static weaknesses, which are actually not hard to lock down, hard to pin those down for white and attack them. But it's all about the dynamism here. So it's very strong for Fischer. And so he's gotten himself in a position where he could try to outplay Taimanov. He just goes back. It's like, you know what, I've kind of stuff over here, not too much going on. So, oh, thanks. That's now, you could take that one. All right. Thanks.
He has the whole
Club
beef out to
soda.
himself.
That's pretty.
So that's a beauty right there.
Sorry, what's that?
No, I was just saying he has the whole beef out to himself.
Yeah, well, the B file, I think though that the reason he didn't double, I'm speculating, is that Taimanov can challenge the B file.
No.
He can't. No, he can challenge it. I think so. He could play Rook B1, maybe. But the thing is, he's like, look, I'm not going to put all my eggs in one basket, or at least my rooks in one file, because they can challenge that. I mean, he obviously has more stuff going on. But I think what he wants to do is preserve his rooks to maybe do to swing laterally, because he wants that. Those might be important ingredients for his king side attack. And you can see White's king is pretty much abandoned. Right? There's not much defense for that king. He's got the 3 pawns. You got like, bishop f1. That's a typical defense. G3. But even if you play G3, and then you got to worry about the light squares with knights swarming, as I mentioned, 3e5. You got to worry about D3 after 95. There's a lot of stuff. You got to worry about the C2, the C4 pawn maybe falling. So there's just a lot of stuff going on. A lot of problems here. And now we both got our kids, right? Yeah. Both hanging out. All right. So there you go. Yeah, my kids actually eat broccoli, which is a good thing. It's very rare, right? So I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that's unique.
Yeah, like you guys like broccoli? That's great. You have your veggies right there. Okay, so queen a3, rook down, bishop f4. So now we have a threat on d6. Actually, you have 3 things attacking d6. So he pushes. As I mentioned, that's always possible. Push, and we get the massive pawns coming forward. Although naturally, Taimanov seeks to blockade, going to d4. So it's actually, he's doing a good job. Taimanov's doing what he can. Fischer's pawns are advancing, but they're stuck on light squares, right? For now. But he's going to work on breaking that down. So for example, if he gets d4 in, which is hard to do, that would be nice. But even if he just gets f4 in, you have to stop him from doing d4 and f4. I mean, f4 is more feasible, of course. Like, what does he do about the bishop? Once you get f4, it's just a ready-made attack. Again, you can feel the looseness in Fischer's position. A lot of people could lose this position if they misplay it as black, right? So like you should sense the danger, of course. So yeah, you shouldn't play d4 and then lose your, well, bishop c4 looks dangerous. It's going to be bad, right? I don't think you should play d4 prematurely. So we're probably going to move our king soon, right? Okay, he blockades our d pawn, which is a good move by white. I give him credit. Queen goes to d7, of course, cover f5. No need to give it to him yet. Queen e3, and there you go. And now it's natural that you're going to move your king to guard the h pawn, but you create this. Usually you have this with pawn on g6, but it's somewhat safe like that, and you also have the g file action available now. So the position's has been shifting. The pawn structure just the last few moves, right? We've molded it quite a bit after. Sure, we had the b pawn exchanges, but the critical thing is we had these central pawn changes. This shift. Anytime this, you have to think about how it's going to mold. And so, those are the types of moments, sort of critical moments in terms of how the middle game's developing. So I would take my time on a move like, as we start going for E4 and going for D5. And for white, you have to really take your time, be like, how am I gonna handle these? So he finds knight B5, I think it's good. And then, but not good enough for Fischer. Okay, and then he goes rook F8, which is I was a little bit, it's interesting. I was a little bit confused as to what's the reason, because it looks like it's almost prophylactic, right? You're making sure you're gonna guard F5 if the knight moves, but maybe it's also just kind of get that X-ray going. Maybe start to push. And besides, your rook doesn't belong on A8. So it's pretty much probably you're weighing between G8 and F8, right? So we'll see what the rook's going to do from F8. So attacks this one and simple move, just go up. But you can see like we have this wonderful attacking setup now. This is an attacking position, except for the blockades. Like we're almost there, right? But he's gonna, he has to deal with these blockades somehow. Otherwise, how does he progress? It's not that easy, right? But you can see the light square bishop is actually not that great. Right, he's going to try and outplay him with the knights, and he wants to really push. But it's not easy. It's tricky. Okay, queen attacks this one again. He's got to deal with the bishop, and he's sacked. Okay, so now things are just changing. Right, now things are just, so white's forcing the issue here. I think he sensed that this was getting very dangerous. And like he was, I think you're going to see this bishop get under more pressure and try to play F4. So I think it's like, let me disrupt black's play. So it's kind of like your attack maybe led to this. But here's the thing. Well, he gets bishop takes H6, but why is that not that great? It seems like he's giving up the exchange, then getting it back. Like it's like a pseudo sacrifice, but it's not that simple. Why doesn't this actually work in terms of winning the H pawn? So what happens after rook takes G7, king takes, and then bishop takes H6 check? Does he get to simply recapture the rook? So take a quick look at that. It's one factor. At first, it looks like he can, but there's one factor as well. Well, it was a nice one. I mean, Fischer saw deeper. It was this whole queen maneuver. Listen, let's take him in on that.
Dun, dun, dun. Don't.
Does
he have
that have to do
go-
with the queen taking the rook?
Yes, I was
I
just
don't
It
gonna
does have to do with that, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, the rook is just hanging. That's it. That's all there is to it. So I don't know whether Taimanov saw that or whether he just thought, okay, I'm gonna accept. I mean, it's not a terrible idea here, because that bishop, like I said, that's an important guardian on G7. So, and after you remove it, yeah, sure, you have to deal with the rook. But he did, I mean, his pieces are, I mean, it seems that he has compensation though. There's certainly a degree of maybe not enough against Fischer, I guess, right? But there is, and now F5 is under attack too. So, I mean, in general, if you can get 2 pawns for the exchange, that itself is equal material. But even 1 pawn for exchange with some pressure, that's often plenty. So it's, in the hands of Fischer, he's able to win this, but it's not easy at all. The bishop pair actually could become quite strong now. But he said, you know what? I'm just gonna. This is a nice example though of kind of just liquidating when you're up some material, but your opponent has a lot of pressure. It's a really nice example of that. How do you win one positions, right? Well, this is I don't know what the computer would say, but let's say it's a minus over plus. It's not a outright winning position, but it's an advantageous position. It's messy though. It's completely messy. Knight takes F5. Maybe it's not even winning because white has so much compensation. But the point is, look at how Fischer's able to handle all this. Obviously, he knowingly goes into this. He doesn't get to hold his F pawn after all. He starts trading rooks. But when he comes in, right, it's again, the queen and rook are both attacking D1. So pretty much you got to take. Okay. And then just goes back, attacks the knight. And still, it's just 1 pawn for the exchange. So materially, it's very good for Fischer. He just has to neutralize Taimanov's play. Knight back. Let me quiz you guys at one point. Let me double check. The next one. Yeah, it's just interesting how he does these he just does some maneuvers, and actually Taimanov doesn't, he gives up rather quickly after this. So let's see. Okay, so resume share, we are here. Okay. So he comes back, hits the knight, tosses in the check. He's just kind of like swarming around with the queen. But in Art of Defense in Chess, you guys remember we talked about Art of Defense in Chess? Who's ever, we did something on defense. I don't
Yes,
think you were
yes,
there. Like, maybe, were you guys
yeah.
there for the one on defense? So yeah, there's one section in terms of defensive motifs or weapons. There's one about confusing the opponent's pieces. So it's kind of like, okay, because certainly, as I said earlier, like there is looseness. That's the thing. Sometimes even after you trade down, though, that looseness or those weaknesses in your position can become exploited. So in general, yeah, I mean, white is starting to hit those weaknesses. So that's you have to kind of anticipate all that, be sensitive to that. But Fischer needs to play aggressively to try to trade down, try to confuse his opponent's pieces a bit, so he doesn't have some nice coordination and Fischer doesn't get mated, right? It could become dangerous. I mean, right now there's only a knight and a bishop in there, but yeah, you have to be careful. So we trade off the rook. Now, okay, he has 4 pieces to worry about. All else being equal, Fischer should win. Plus he has, I mean, his very direct d-pawn push later. If he can trade down, he's got the d-pawn coming. He'll probably win the a-pawn too. So you have some passed pawns. He's up the exchange. He should win, but you have to neutralize this. So he checks. Now he comes here. So, I mean, why not? There's actually, well, in this case, he's just kind of starting to create some counterplay before anything really takes off. What is the counterplay here? First, it's g3. So it's kind of, actually, it's exposing white's king a bit. The more pawn moves, the better in terms of, the more pawn moves in front of the king, the better in terms of how you can reach the king. So yeah, it seems like he has a little cocoon, but how is Fischer trying to exploit that, get inside that kind of cocoon or get into his igloo in there?
Queen E1.
Yeah, it's very, again, like at this point, it's pretty direct. Queen E1, and he wants to mate, right? So what does he do? Knight C6. And then, okay, kind of Knight C6, let's see. Well, what if you do Queen E1 now? Not sure with Knight C6, it's kind of, I don't know why he did Knight C6. But yeah, he goes Queen B6. So now we are, aiming at the diagonal. And so if the queen moves away, we can take F2, right? Can't go to F4, can't guard the diagonal on the other way. And at this point, oh, so he's going for this X-ray capture of the pawn. Fischer doesn't allow that to work. But yeah, I mean, he wants the queen trade here. And I think the idea is, if the knight comes back, so now that the queen's already here, putting pressure, not on B4, now on B6, putting pressure on the diagonal, can't we just go here? So we're forcing the queen trade. And again, as we saw, the end game should be pretty straightforward. So, okay, they basically, white hasn't achieved anything. Say the knight, I don't say the bishop returns. Yeah, we can do this or this. Let's just gain a tempo on the bishop and we pick off the pawn while holding our own pawn, and that's 3 pawns for 3. And we're just up at exchange for you have the bishop pair, it's not enough. And you're just going to steamroll it. We'll just roll the a pawn. And the knights will become tricky too. Like you start getting your knight into F3 and start coming behind and threaten checkmate and whatnot. So yeah, black's winning. You can see black's winning, right? Get that pawn back. So yeah, so he does a little swarming, a little bit of kind of cat and mousing almost, swarming around, making some threats. And then knight takes A7 happens. Let's double check the next move. Yeah, he just trades. He just liquidates. And rook E1 and resigns. Why do you think he resigned right now? I mean, the bishop has to move. Bishop actually has very limited options. 2 moves, right? Basically, I mean, you can go to G4, but that's pretty straightforward. You can just trade it if you want. And you can go take the A pawn. I mean, yeah, the A pawn's gonna, I mean, it's some work still. He might even have better stuff than that. No, I mean, the thing is though, well, this is the same concept that I'm getting at now that I want you to find. No matter what, whether the bishop goes here and you trade it, potentially, or if he goes to, let's say, just envision him going to B5. A6 just looks awkward. Let's say he goes to B5. Okay, he wants to play A4. What can you do now? Seems to me that this is just very strong.
Can black play A1?
Which one?
I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Which move?
Black rook A1.
A1?
I don't know. I'm just thinking.
Well, you can, at the very least, you can do that. Yeah. Oh, no, then he plays A4. No, there's something else. I think we can play for, we want to mate him. We want to check.
Oh, okay.
If we can, yeah, let's try and checkmate him. It seems to me that this is quite strong. Well, there's that. Plus, there's the concept of running your D pawn. We'll combine those. This should be unstoppable, like overall, win a piece at least. What do you think? And I mentioned this idea earlier. It was possible based on the structure after E4 was played. It's still there. What is it?
Hop the knight in E5, maybe?
Exactly. Yeah, it's going to E5. You can't, because I think the idea was that he resigned because he has to move the bishop. So he gets knight F3 coming. And if he moves, like, I guess this is among his only moves. At the very least, we can just play this immediately because we have a fork. That's just game. I mean, once you roll the pawn, it's game, right? I don't think we have any, we don't have a mate, do we? We might have a mate, but no, I think he's going to run to F4 comfortably enough. But you could just toss this in. If he takes, you fork him. Either way, it probably works. I mean, and again, there's limited. Check. Oh, that's nice. Now it is a mate. So anyway, there either you mate him or you're going to run your pawn. But yeah, even if you don't have the mate, this is just running the D pawn's winning on its own. The knight is so misplaced. A pawn's going nowhere, and yeah, you're going to at least win a piece, and you'll be up a whole row. So pretty nice game, huh? But you see, it required defense.
That was a great game.
It required good defense, though. I mean,
Yeah.
all the time, if you have a winning position, you'll have to defend sometimes because your opponent's going to throw everything in the kitchen sink at you, and you have to hold them off. You have to restrain them. Sometimes very dynamically. You can't just like be like, hey, don't do anything to me. There is a moment where they're going to throw things at you, and it's going to get messy, like right around, let's say, like right around here.
Yeah,
That's very messy.
yeah.
But,
But it's
you know.
also restraining too.
How's that?
No, I'm looking at, that's a different position. I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, sure. You said he was restraining as well. Yeah, I think earlier, right? And
No,
White was
earlier-
trying to restrain Fischer, but he couldn't quite get there.
Well,
It's more like I think White knew he was in trouble. So what happened? I think the narrative then is, you know, Fischer he took on some weaknesses. He took some risk. He began steamrolling him though in the center. And Taimanov actually did a pretty good job. Right, he's blockading his pawns. But I think he kind of sensed that either he sensed that the blockade was breaking. There might be like knight H5 moves coming, right? Knight H5 stuff in F4, right? I think he sensed that the blockade was breaking, or maybe just viewed it opportunistically, like, hey, I'm going to try to win. But it's obvious that he's not getting the exchange. So I think it was just an exchange stack, but it was also kind of, yeah, it was an interesting exchange stack, but it was also kind of forced in a way. He felt obliged to do it because it's sort of obligated, because otherwise he's just worse. You know what I mean? So is the pressure, this is the type of win in a way, it's the pressure from the opponent. It forces the opponent to concede something or just get squashed. And then, but at least you go down with a fight. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, I'm going down. I'm going to take you down with me, right? And take down the pawn with me. I'm going to create some counter chance. I'm going to get the F5 pawn. But then Fischer tried to play really well and just defend / counter attack. But ultimately, the thing is that Taimanov, yeah, he can argue again. You can argue, hey, you have weaknesses, and he does. And you also have the G and H pass pawns, but he just can't quite get there yet, which is why Fischer has to pounce now. There's no immediate threats, right? Does that make sense?
yes.
Oh, and Lynn, when were you thinking? Oh, see you, Leah. When were you thinking, Lynn, about the restraint?
Earlier, I was saying by the Lear. Earlier, when you said there was a lot of weaknesses in there.
Right.
Like
Right. That was around now. That was at this right around now. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's also restraining too. You know, White doesn't have too much he can do, really.
Right. True.
And he's also brought his rook all the way down to the second rank and file.
Exactly. That's by virtue of his initiative. It's his initiative and his center. So like,
Yeah.
again, theoretically, like D6 came under attack, right? So theoretically has weaknesses, but are they attackable? Or two, they're not fixed in place though. They're very dynamic. So they're not really that attackable. And it's more like he has so much dynamic. They exist, right? And Taimanov was trying to get in on them. He got in a little bit. But the thing is that Fischer was so dynamic. And by the time he really got in, Fischer did have a material advantage. And he was able to favorably liquidate / checkmate him or get in and win more material. So yeah, but I see what you're saying though. In that he's restraining him through his own pressure and through the center. That's why we like a big center, because it holds off our opponent.
Yeah. And he
Like-
definitely has the center.
Oh yeah, he owns it. That's what I was talking about with the C5 line. where the pawn takes on, they take on pawn on c6 and the b pawn takes. Well, effectively, you've traded off your d pawn, like in this situation too. So end up trading off his d pawn for the b pawn. So the d pawn's gone now. B pawn comes closer to the center, supporting a move like d5. So we're controlling all those squares and that one. So look at all those are all the squares that the pawns are controlling that they can attack diagonally. And we could thrust them forward like as he did. He ended up thrusting the e pawn and the d pawn. I think that's about it, right? But those were the two.
And then the knight got h5 covered, you know, so the bishop can't come down there.
Yeah, everything's covered, exactly. The bishop was there, but it got booted. We booted it out. And and we talked about maybe he had the idea of coming in here. Probably wasn't that great, but he just took the pawn. Like, you know, I'm gonna take the pawn. And while the queen went ahead and tried to get the pawn back on b7, she got chased around. The rook got to come in, as you said. And so basically Fischer just developed this massive initiative. And the thing about a center is whoever has the center tends to possess the initiative, because you can do so much with it. And until your opponent kind of gets rid of that center, you have this kind of enduring initiative, right? Just by virtue of your bigger center, because there's always the ability to blow it open, make them worry about the advance of your center. Now, if it's locked up, that's different, but this is not locked up at all. So it's very different from a King's Indian, as we were talking about, where we have fixed pawns because of the capture. But that's why we need to take back with the G pawn. And we're gonna have dynamic pawns, but it's very open, very dynamic. And Fischer just understood better. So there's your first game. Do you guys have any questions about the first one? Any others?
Just one.
Yeah,
Okay,
Nikki?
so when the dark square bishop, he moved, right? Like to get away from the rook.
Which one?
Like right in this position right now.
I think he brought the rook out. Let me see. I think he did rook FD1 at some now or soon. Let me see.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if like, okay, what did white do after that? I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, let's go through. Yeah, we don't have to memorize it. You don't have to memorize
Yeah,
the whole
yeah,
thing.
no, it's
Maybe
okay,
if you-
it's okay, but
Maybe we
then
could
whatever-
spend it. Maybe you could spend a day or two trying to memorize it because it's so complicated.
No, I know.
No, I don't memorize.
Okay, so he
Okay,
pushed
let's see.
that.
So here.
Yeah, he never had a chance to I was just trying to find a way for like white to strike back, like some kind of F4 or F3, something like just to
Right.
rolling
I
over and
suppose.
dying, like
And he's what?
something.
Sorry, he's what?
Like instead of he just feels like he just rolled over.
Just
Like, I mean, he
dying,
was
yeah.
trying, like, yeah, he just like rolled over and died. Like, I wish he had some kind of way to, you know, of course, you know, like something like just.
Right, right.
But those
Kinda
bishops
fun.
just sitting there, and neither one of them, both of them are bad, actually. You know.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think that's how Fischer planned it. You know, if he get the initiative, get the center, and maybe get across the 4th or the 5th rank, then that's all a part of his plan, his calculations.
Yeah.
Right. And you can't know everything. Like you can't know exactly that there's going to be an exchange stack on G7. Like you don't know that's going to happen. You don't have to necessarily allow it. But you
Right.
don't know from here that the rook's going to take on G7 and that the bishop's going to get to H6 and that the bishops are going to begin to look a little better, but that you're going to have an exchange. You know what I mean? Like you can't know everything, especially not in such a dynamic position. Because again, you allowed him to come in at that point. You
Right,
made
right.
those decisions, right? But the point is, yeah, as you said, he knew in conceptually and based on possibilities for white in general. Like right now, like, these bishops, yeah, they're not like bad bishops, but they're sort of, they're just not, they're looking at thin air. They're looking at thin air. They're not doing anything.
They're
Yeah.
not effective, just
They're not
sitting
effective,
there, you
yeah.
know.
Like this bishop, well, here's the thing. It got better now. It got better. The dark square bishop, now he's fine. Like now
Okay,
he's
yeah.
blockading the pawn for now. And the bishop here stops knight H5, so we can hold that. But then he gets hit with knight G6. That's the thing. He gets to come out. We deal with it, and then he's going to get hit anyway. And you don't want to go G3 and let him take on F4 and double. Yeah, but interestingly, you should see game 3. Look up game 3 of Fischer-Spassky in 1972. The 1992 match is fun too, when they came back and it was a Yugoslavia, right? But the 72 match, of course, the main one, game 3, Fischer takes on doubled H pawns. Like he voluntarily allows like H pawn to go to like H5, H4 or something, or H6. So it's pretty interesting. But here would be no purpose in doubling. That's just weakening, right? It's just bad. Yeah. So you could just see that the pieces become marginally active, but then he just keeps them like looking at thin air. They have no targets really. And the D5 will be the only D5/F5. These are fragmented a bit, yeah. But can he get, so they are, like I said, there are some weaknesses, but he can't reach them. But this is the kind of situation or the dynamics of your position allow that to work out for you. And even though he has a ostensibly solid king side, it's not unassailable. So by pushing those pawns, it's kind of like if you throw your G pawn at your opponent, it's weakening for you if your king's on G8 or whatever. It's weakening for you, but you're going to use that pawn to batter their king side too, as long as you're the one who has favorable conditions to attack there, if you think, or maybe just to take a risk. But it goes both ways. So even though he looks solid, but also there are not many defenders here. He has like even bishop G3 that'll get punched by F4 eventually. Bishop F1 is just passive and clogs up the rooks to come, to guard in the, you know what I mean? So it's very clogged up, and that's by virtue of one, the space advantage. Well, the pawns have a space advantage, they confer that advantage, and they can steamroll. So it's a lot of this about, it's all about pawn structure, right? And slash piece placement, but the pawns make the piece placement possible given piece placements. The only thing you'd think about is maybe rook b1. And this bishop never got to do much, but it did have this kind of ominous X-ray that white needs to look out for. Like insert, that's why probably the queen, if the bishop, if he does anything too soon, he's got to watch out for some action in c3. Yeah, so there's some problems here. Definitely some problems. Anyway, really interesting stuff. But ultimately, yeah, it's about creating that, and he created initiative. That's really what it is. He took some risks, a little loose, but he tightened it up here, tightened the screws a little bit, king h7. But he's taking risks because he wants to win, May not be perfect. But now, again, he allowed this. Oh, no, wait, hold on. No, but he voluntarily, I'm pretty sure he didn't have to allow rook c7. It's not ideal to allow it, but he could have like gone, I don't know what. Rook c8 fails to takes bishop a6. Yeah, I don't know, but it was okay for him. Because by the time the rook came in, he got a counterattack on a6 and stuff. So he's trying to take the a pawn. So it was okay for him. And I guess he could have gone like maybe kick the rook out eventually. But that was the critical moment, really. He's creating this dynamism, and suddenly the rook comes in. All right, so let's check out the next one. You guys ready?
Yep.
Yes.
A really nice one. And then this one, okay, so now we're going to see how he handles the Sicilian. And this is the longest one. And this is the one I was talking about where I saw the, sorry, what's that?
It has a name. It's called The Lonely Knight.
Yeah, the knight becomes very lonely. He has white this time. So it's how he's handling the Sicilian. So yeah, this is a very interesting endgame. But yeah, so I was looking, I randomly pulled this this puzzle up in a book yesterday from Fischer's outrageous chess moves. I was just showing a small class that, and it has the position from this endgame. And then I randomly came across this endgame. So it was funny that in one day that happens sometimes. So we have this as like classical or kind of old Sicilian, because nowadays they usually go d6. This is old Sicilian, knight c6. Bishop b5 is pretty good too against this. But yeah, I think that's very classic. And there's so many names for it, right? I don't know all the theory on e6, but isn't that called the Taimanov variation, basically?
Yeah.
That's effectively the Taimanov, right? I've heard like there's also a Khan variation. Isn't that very similar with e6, Khan variation?
Correct. I think bishop b5, that's Rosalimo.
Yeah, that's Rosalimo with bishop b5.
Yeah.
But if black goes e6, because like Taimanov, it says Paulson here. There's some Khan variation. Maybe it depends if a6 is played or whatever, but it's all very similar, But the idea is that it's very active for black. And so after then Fischer has this interesting response, but I don't think he likes this knight c3, bishop b4 stuff. I certainly wouldn't like that with white. It is a thing, but I don't want to give black that much if I'm playing with white. They're going to have way too much play. And then they're going to hit you with d5 because they're minimizing your control over d5. Then I could come out, pawn could push to d5. So it's not that fun if you're playing with white. So, but he finds this interesting, he has an interesting idea of knight b5. So he wants to go into d6 and check and get rid of the dark squared bishop, and the queen will be dominating on d6 and just looks pretty good. Bishop can come out, hit d6 as well, It's just a nice bishop pair to have with lots of dark squared control, the d-pawn stuck. So that's what he wants. And d6 is basically kind of like what they call Scheveningen or Scheveningen structure with e6, d6. And speaking of controlling a lot of squares, so this compact center, similar to a hedgehog type center, basically you can call it small center. It covers a lot of squares and it's flexible. You can play d5 or e5. But what Fischer wants is for his opponents to play e5. And then we can get into all the different names of that structure and call it the Boleslavsky hole or something, There's many names for that, and there's the Sveshnikov and this and that. But after using A6 and everything, but there's different versions. Point is that there's the same similar structure for black. Black has more central pawns, 2 against 1. It's a question of where you put them. But I like the E6 and a dragon that's going to stay on. It's going to stay D6 and E7 and then G6. Get that dragon set up. So yeah, it just depends where you want to put them. Different Sicilians.
Yeah, I think the con is A6.
Is with E6 and A6.
Yeah, I mean the con is kind of slow move, but you know it immobilizes the area behind it is immobilized. It covers the B5 square.
Yeah, there's actually lines before knight B5. There's certain lines where the queen goes to C7, allows knight B5, just goes to B8, and then you end up playing B5 anyway. So and then I have to leave. It's very interesting. Oops, it's very interesting stuff. Yeah, I'm not. I haven't really played it myself, but I would certainly consider it. Okay. So anyway, he's going for, he wants to go to D6. It's really weird opening, just so you have the context. But the opening, the move order is very strange, but just remember the key concepts. So he goes bishop F4. So again, provoking E5, and that's a different Sicilian structure, right? There's that Boleslavsky hold on D5. Now he goes back to E3, and you guys probably aren't going to guess the next move after knight F6. Actually, it looks natural enough in a way. It's a natural enough position that arises. But the move order is very strange. Can you guys guess what he did after knight F6? He's trying to create favorable imbalances, though, in that spirit. So trying to, be uncompromising, outplay his opponent. What did he do?
Whose turn?
Fischer's move after knight F6.
Please don't tell me he played F4.
No, not F4. Although F4 might make some sense. But there's like knight G4. No thanks.
Okay.
That was very uncomfortable.
I was just trying to find some bizarre.
I mean, I think in this move, people often capture well, actually, D6, but I don't know if that's what he
we're not there yet. Yeah, we're not there yet. But we might try to castle queenside and then try to take it.
Okay.
Well, the interesting thing is that you might want to. There's certain moves where he wants to provoke A6 to hit B6 and stuff. So then we can try to keep our knight there and try to pound that D6 point. But if nothing else, there are also options to play for C4 and just lock like a Maraxi bind and lock down that D5 weakness and the D6 pawn behind. So D6 pawn's weak, and therefore the square in front of it's weak. That's a gaping hole. So if black tries to get away with it, play like F5 later and strike back. Because again, they do have more center. They want to dissolve white center and then eventually hope that they would advance their own center. But I mean, hey, in the meantime, the E4 pawn happens to be hanging. So I don't think he's just going to give it away for nothing. So what does white do then after knight F6?
The bishop to D3.
That's one way to hold it, although it's something more again less expected. It's a natural move, but just you wouldn't expect it based on the moves he's made, because it seems like he's wasting. It basically seems like he's wasting some time.
Did he bring the other bishop back and pin the queen? Would he do something like that weird?
Here?
Yeah.
Yeah, he moved it a third time. Now the second time, okay, the first time it costs him. You think like this. No, the first time he moves, he's not really wasting that much time if you think about it. Because the first time he's hitting D6, so black moves the E pawn twice. They really waste time.
Wow.
It's kind of like he spends a move developing the bishop, right? It's like he spends a move developing the bishop. Black spends a move playing E5 effectively, right? They cancel out. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Because we move this twice, they move that twice. So it's like E5 bishop E3. But then knight F6, yeah, effectively it would be moving your bishop twice. But he really wants to, yes, there's probably a more favorable version to this.
Wow.
But yeah, it's weird, right? But he wants this, he likes what he's trying to play for the imbalance. But it's like, if you don't do it, well, you could play, well, E4 is under attack. No, this is the problem though, maybe. He wants to get G5 into. You definitely don't. No, F3, that's terrible. Black would love this position. That's what black wants. Breaking the center is great for black, right? That's what you want. And you can see white is dissolved white center, hitting the bishop. Black is doing great. Bishops are coming out. Black has an attacking game out with that in centralization with the pawn coming. The pawn center rushing forward like Fischer did last time. So yeah, he goes bishop G5, queen check. Yeah, he just tries to trade queens. And then he wins the pawn. Very strange, right? So it's actually a pawn sack. So he moves the bishop again to pin the knight, so ostensibly to cover the D5 square. and temporarily guard the e-pawn. And he does that, then he just so he's trying to, yeah, he's just very complicated play to outplay, but the end goal is to outplay your opponent, create imbalances that you can use against them. But obviously his foresight was so deep. Now I don't know if he had, maybe this was a prepared line because he knew that his opponent was always playing the e6 stuff. So he's down a pawn going into the endgame, but there's obviously a problem. I mean, obviously there are tactical problems for black. The first and foremost, what's the problem for black here?
Work.
His knight is
Work.
one of his knights.
Knight
is-
It just said work.
Yeah,
Yeah,
But
he
it doesn't mean
got
you
to
should
do
do
Well,
it.
actually,
But
there's
work.
going to be a fork.
Yeah, but
Right.
it doesn't mean you should do it though. You have the fork available. Now, if that were it, then I'd be like, oh, obviously you're gonna hang the e-pawns, you're gonna win the rook. But it's not that simple. Because if you were to do the fork right now, is that actually gonna work?
Yeah, because of the
The fork
bishop.
work. The bishop's hanging, right? So yeah, you get the rook, but do you even escape with your knight? A lot of times you don't,
Mhm.
right? So if you do the fork, you take, it's like, okay, thanks.
Mhm.
Now I'm just down to exchange, and you're not, yeah, that knight you can go like, bishop e7's coming soon, and that knight's not going to escape, I think. So then black might be winning. Well, black is already up a pawn, so maybe you play b6 and they get it back, like bishop, or even a6. No, you're not going a6 coming out. Just go b6, bishop e7. Knight has to stack for it, and you have black has a knight and a bishop for a rook, and black is very happy. So you can see you don't want to be, you can't do that prematurely, but he does it in a very sophisticated way. He goes into the end game, right? Or queenless middle game, basically. Simply retreats. Oh, back again. How many bishop moves was that?
Oh my
We got
gosh.
4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Probably another one coming. Okay. So king here. King guards and stops knight c7 fork. And we are hitting a7 for what it's worth. So if you really wanted to, you could probably try to get the pawn back, but he's not, that's not what he's going for right now. It develops naturally. It's like, what is he doing? He's just giving, but now let's talk about this. It's actually a very interesting position. You've given away a pawn, but you've gotten so much in return, actually. What did you get in return?
Well, piece activity, you're gonna castle queenside maybe.
Right, and that'll increase your piece activity on the d file. And what
Yeah,
else?
just the exposed king, relatively inactive, black rook. I mean, black knight.
The a5 knight, yeah. This
Yeah,
one's pretty
growth.
active, but he's also, well, we're probably gonna trade that one off.
Yeah,
Just in general, look at black's development for Taimanov.
yeah,
Pretty difficult, right?
difficult to look, correct.
And
Can't
anything else?
castle anymore.
Yeah, he's lost his castling rights. The king is a target, actually. Got the bishop pair coming on his king, ideally. Well, he has the bishop pair, but he can't really use the c8 bishop anytime soon. e7 bishops fighting on granite on d6. As Nikki said, we want to castle queenside, like in the Morphe game, orthodox game. Get your king out of there. Get your rook on the d file attack. I mean, he's probably not going to have a mate like that, but he's going to have pressure in this case. And he'll win the end game. He's really going to win the end game. That's what he's playing for. He's not getting some mating attack right now, just pressure. So it's a pawn down, queenless middle game with a lot of pressure, though. I mean, a lot of times you'll do that to make the king take on d8, like you'll trade queens and you'll castle queenside with check. And there's a line in the Scandinavian where you do that and you're down a pawn, but you have so much pressure in the center. So anyway, yeah. Oh, what about weaknesses? Last thing is weaknesses. That's another justification. Kind of like in the last game where white was so solid and Fischer had a lot of play with black. Here, white's the one who's solid, but his opponent doesn't have enough counterplay, right? Fischer's just tight, nice, tight position, no weaknesses.
And
Really.
that's what I was looking at. I'm like, okay, this is almost like the other game when he was playing black. Only, he still got the control because he got the two knights sitting out there with the bishop on those great diagonal, so he got and would you say that that's kind of constraining, restraining?
Well, yeah, again, it's like an enduring kind of restraint, yeah, because your opponent can't really push. He has, and going back to the beginning, black had more central pawns. Now black is the only one with central pawns. They can't do much. Again, there's the f5 stuff, though. Black always likes to go, generally likes to get the f5 in, like f5, f4, f5, e4, very similar to what Fischer did. But this is different. He has scenarios like this in another Sicilian as well. He plays it, even though he gives them more central pawns, he plays against it. That's exactly what his opponent was trying to do against his big center. Now, if Fischer had the white side of the last game, maybe he would have exploited Taimanov's big center. But yeah, that was the effort anyway. But the thing is, we have so much piece play. G6 is as well. If it can't move, it's theoretically a backward pawn. Like if we, like let's say you have this scenario, like with c4 especially, it's just locked down, can't advance, right? But it's still a target. I mean, it's kind of backward if it can't, de facto, if it can't move, we're going to castle queenside soon. And yeah, it's just, and he just plays so precisely. But you just have to have that feel that, yeah, you're down a pawn, but largely your lead in development is due to the fact that the knight has to re-centralize and their king's in the center. So you're going to quickly castle queenside, and they're going to have to keep dealing with your d-file pressure, which means they're going to have to waste some moves. So you're going to probably continue to improve your development / not just having pieces out, but the quality of your pieces are going to continue to improve. And that might just lead to a winning position, winning advantage, a huge advantage. So Josie, and that, yeah, he's going to just milk this here. So the castles, now that's not actually hanging because he has b3, bishop takes a2. I want to trap it like he did against Spassky in the first game of their match, to parallel there again. Okay, now he wants the pawn back. He's actually giving, he's like, fine, throws his hands, but like, fine, have your pawn back. But he's hoping to neutralize the position. Fischer's like, nope, I'm not going to let you off the hook here. I'm not going to trade down and alleviate some pressure. Because like we trade, the king goes to c7, the rook comes to d8. I don't think Fischer has that much, does he? If you trade and king c7 happens. So Fischer's not going to take, he's going to strike. So using your f pawn to hit the e pawn, and then we can start to demolish that center and open up lines against it. And that's great. So again, you still don't need to take it. It's just funny if you consider the parallels to the last game though. Remember there was so much pressure on d6, but here it actually matters more, right? That pawn's a sitting duck on d6, but it's all about white's piece activity, safer king, right?
So white is aiming at d6 3 times and black is protecting it, what, once?
Yeah, he could take it at will, right? But he doesn't care about it. He just doesn't care about it. I think he gets his pawn back in a bit, but no, not anytime soon. He just wants piece activity. Is an important understanding because a lot of us would snatch that pawn. Right? I'm sure a lot of us, but not to get greedy, but just like, hey, let me take my pawn back and break through on the d file. It's very logical, right?
No, but you see how he's constantly, he could have taken it, but he's tightening up his net.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's tightening it. And
very large. He's casting a wide
probably
net.
would have taken it, but he's positioning his pieces for the win.
Yes. And that's more important than snatching the pawn. You could take the pawn whenever you want. But here, let me just show you guys. It's very instructive if you look at it now, like the first chance you get. I think it was maybe another chance earlier, but this is the main chance he has to win it. So, quote, win it. But the thing is, one, he knows he can get it wherever he wants. The threat is greater than the execution. And this is exactly what we see here. This is actually good for black. I mean, let's say, where is he going to go? Either c7 or e. Let's say he just centralizes. Probably say, okay, this looks fine. Maybe cover the queen side. Okay, we can't guard the rook. You have to retreat. You have to retreat your rook, and then black just goes here, and white has nothing. And black actually has that e pawn again, like we talked about for the trades. So let's say you go let's say you want to go here. Oh, now you get hit by f5. Now you probably have to go f3 and not get hit by. I mean, it's just bad. Black is at least equal now, and they have this cool knight c4 stuff. So yeah, bishop pair. So what? The knight's coming into c4, and the rooks can double or whatever. They won't put pressure on the c file. Black has a great game at the very least, right? Probably slight advantage black, at least equal. But yeah, so don't do that. If you do that, you're not going to win, I think. So that's why it shows you patience. It's a good game about patience, but it's really a buildup, Threat is greater than the execution. You keep piling up, you're building up towards small threats, but you're building, it's about building your threats are going to come after you build the pressure. Then we'll have real threats. How about that? We don't need it now. But now he has what he wants. He loves the bishop pair. Now he's got the bishops cutting in, slicing into his opponent's position. And that b5 bishop's going to win the game for him, actually. It's going to outplay the knight. But he just has beautiful piece placement. And Taimanov, not so much, right? He's stuck. And again, he doesn't really want to give him the pawn in a bad way, though. Like if he moves away, Fischer might win it under the best circumstances, like with check and invasion. So he still kind of has to hold on to it in a sense. Like, okay, you only take it if I liquidate pieces for black. He just wants to liquidate, but he doesn't want to give it to him for free and let the rooks in. So he's still kind of tied to it in a way. Now he's walking into the pin of the bishop, annoying. Okay, free movement, free attack on the bishop, why not? Now we shift the e file. Nothing much, we don't care about the d file anymore. Let's work on the e file for a little bit. Okay, let's just take the pawn. Well, let's win the f pawn back. Let's not take the d pawn. If we're going to choose, let's take a pawn that's already strong, not that's weak. All right, this is a safe pawn for black. Generally speaking, it's fine. It's working with the other pawns. Can push to f5 or whatever. So let's take that. And that'll weaken e6, or maybe sink the bishop on e6. But the point is, we'll leave him with the weak pawn. So we'll have equal number of pawns, but then I still have a nice safe position. You have a weakness. So we have that in addition to the coordination and the bishop pair. So you can start to see this kind of small wins. That's positional chess. You know, a lot of positional chess is subtle accumulation of advantages, right? Small, they don't seem that significant, but here we are. Now you can see this domination all of a sudden. He's still down the pawn, who cares? I mean, again, he can win it back. He can take this and win. He doesn't want to do that, only if he gets a fork, but he's not getting a fork because the king will take back and no more check. But he doesn't care about it. Just keep the pressure, take it later maybe, but just keep building. So, oh, by the way, why does he, b4 looks like a strange move because it's loose. It is loose. There's the bishop can come to c3, right? But why does he do b4? What do you think?
Maybe just to keep the knight away.
Exactly. Yeah, I think so. You don't really want to play b5 without the knight in. Just keep the knight away. That's it. Restriction. Maybe advance a little bit later, you know, maybe a4 and stuff later. But right now, it's just keep the knight out. Because it is a, you know, it's not ideal. Like you don't want to do this voluntarily if it doesn't do anything because you loosen your bishop and everything, and you let the bishop come to c3. So only if it works. But the thing is, I always have to consider this move. Oh, Michael can't.
Oh, yeah, what about that?
You do have to consider that move. I didn't see it. I didn't see it. Does he do it? No. He does it later. Yeah, he's going for a bit. That's what he's saying. Same treatment, just bishop d2, it looks like. Oh, hey, Michael, he came back in. Okay. So we have this. Take the pawn finally. Now, ultimately, he just can't sit there anymore, I guess. He's like, all right, fine. Just take the pawn. Just take my f pawn. Get it over with. I mean, I don't know. Otherwise, he's just sitting passively all game. What else is he going to do? I mean, he'll start. I mean, obviously, he's not going to keep his king there forever. He'll probably play like c4. Just keep building his position. Might even start expanding on the king side, g4, g5. You know, kind of squeeze his pawns here. Yeah, just a nice position. Keep building. And now this is this really nice endgame. So he's got his pawn back with interest in terms of his superior position. d5 pawn is theoretically weaker than any, but you know, you got to watch out for your b pawn, but it's adequately guarded. Now he chooses to take. Now, if you take on c3 with the pawn, arguably you can attack it, make it weak. It's kind of hard to hold eventually, it seems like. It's tricky, but yeah, I think he's gonna also maybe bishop d5 is coming and can pile on c3 with the rooks laterally or move the king eventually, like king reroutes to b3. So he doesn't want to take with the pawn, takes the rook, he's attacking. Okay, so what? We're just go king b2. And now watch out for c2, but this is a real target on d4 now. It's an isolated pawn, right? Like the Isolani we talked about, isolated d pawn that is advanced, very vulnerable. This exactly, if we were playing as an isolated pawn earlier, this is what we would want. Trade down minor pieces, have the rooks, and the minor piece that we do have is superior for white. See why it's better? Okay, that's very important to understand. Why is the bishop generally better than the knight in this position? And that's what he uses to win. Ultimately, why is the bishop really good here?
One, I guess it looks like it has a lot of range.
Yep.
Two, it doesn't look like the black pawns really block it.
Yeah, nice range. And how's it outplay the knight?
Well, the knight could move right now. It can move to c5. I mean, it can also move to, not that it wants a d8. It really only has one move right now.
Yeah, very limited. Oh yeah, good. Well, actually,
Into mobile.
so that's interesting. Actually, can you go to d6? You have to think about whether you can take, knight takes.
Yeah,
Right? Yeah, it gets messy.
correct.
But yeah, the point, it's very hard to move it down. That's the point. Okay, someone else said something? Huda?
Yeah, like I just came back. Sorry, I drifted off to sleep. It's pretty late here.
Oh yeah, you're still good?
Yeah,
still
like I
good?
mean,
Okay. You can
yeah,
just
like, I
watch like
just-
kind of half asleep, like hypnotic, right? Just like take it in, right? And then you'll just dream about the
I
chess
fe-
game, right?
Yeah, no, I actually fell asleep. I just woke up now. I had a glass of water, so I'm feeling better.
All right, good. Yeah, you'll still absorb it. Okay. So bishop g2, but basically what happened is he's
No,
finally,
I mean,
but he was very,
I
you saw
li-
the part where he's very patient and he didn't take the d pawn. Did you see that part?
no, I didn't see anything. Like from the moment we started pulling the games up, like I think 5 minutes after you opened chess games, I fell asleep.
No, you saw the first game though, right? You were here for the first game, maybe not
No.
the very end of it, but no, we saw the bulk of the first game, right? But this game, no, okay. So basically, though, he's been very patient, right? He didn't take he could have taken the d pawn. He waited.
No, I wasn't.
He was there, wasn't he?
I wasn't.
For some
there
of it,
the
maybe not
first
for the whole
game,
thing.
so- sorry.
But there was still some good stuff in there. He might have-
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, wait. Yeah, for the start.
No, that wasn't
like
a
the
dream.
first
That was
10
not.
minutes.
That was not a dream, Uday. You were there. Maybe you thought you were
Yeah,
dreaming.
no, I remember now. It was the Kings in. It was a
Yeah, the
Kings
Kings.
in.
Now
It
you were
was a
here for the
Kings
kid.
right?
Yeah, you were here for the kid. Now we're analyzing.
And
You were
yeah,
looking at the
I was
Sicilian now,
start.
the Taimanov Sicilian basically. Okay, so beating him in his own system. So anyway, the point is he could have taken the pawn. He didn't. He just keeps feeling pressure. He's got the bishop pair, and he's restraining the knight. So we're talking about why is the bishop better? That's important to evaluate. Didn't take with the pawn because it becomes a sitting duck on c3. So he takes with the rook. Well, why not? You attack the a pawn, simply king b2. Okay, so here we are. And then he's trading this one. Although it doesn't really work, but I think it's that, like I said, it's the sitting, either way, it's a sitting duck. I mean, can he really guard? Actually, you're sort of, are you threatening rook takes d4? Not quite, I think not quite. Because he takes, if he takes, you take c3. Rook takes a3 as a desperado.
No, rook takes
you take
c2,
d8, the knight takes back, hitting f7.
Rook takes c2, check.
Or rook takes. If you take rook takes c2, oh, he takes with check, even better. Yeah. So he's not threatening that. It's in the air, but he's not threatening it. But the point is, he just figures to chuck it at him. I guess he figured maybe he just figures after doubling. After doubling, maybe the bishop gets attacked, it retreats. That's going to fall. So yeah, the bishop can tuck back on anywhere at b3 or something. There's no rook c4, so it's going to fall. And eventually, so he just chucks it at him. I guess to at least now he creates isolated d pawn for Fischer, but no, he doesn't even take. Now he trades. And maybe, I don't know if he thought he had anything there. No, he's simply losing the pawn. He has a couple like attacking moves, but Fischer will neutralize that. He's just up the pawn now. So he goes from being down a pawn, gets back the f pawn. Now he picks up the d pawn. So ultimately he wins the d pawn back, which was as I said, don't take the weak pawn. Let him give it to you, right? Ultimately he doesn't like guarding it. So ultimately he just chucks it at Fischer. And then he gets it back. What's that, Uday?
No, it's just that was me. I think I was just snickering at the fact that you said he chucks it at him. Here.
Like maybe it's just some.
Yeah.
So sorry.
That's all good. Like Ivan Chuck, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a pun about Ivan Chuck.
Oh, that's good.
They call him Chucky. They call him Chucky. I was like, yeah. You can have puns there as well. So Uday, what was that?
Yeah. Like I was thinking that maybe it's just one of those psychological ploys that they use to try to get him off. Like because he knows he's losing this game. So anything he can do to throw him off, anything unexpected.
Sort of, yeah. It's kind of like it's just like in the first game. So you saw where he sat, where there's the sack of the rook on g7, the exchange on g7, because he was already in trouble. So it's like once your opponent sort of feels the pressure, you often don't have to just play it to its conclusion or that same narrative of, oh, I'm going to keep building the pressure and beat you that way. They want to shift the narrative and be like, all right, I'm in trouble. Well, yeah, like I said before, I'm going down with a fight. So I'm gonna take the initiative, maybe cough up some material, at least get some initiative to feel like they are not being squashed. But then after you kill off the initiative, then you're probably winning. And they've actually helped you maybe by coughing up that material. So he coughs up, he chucks the pawn at him, right? But then he's obviously there's no way to hold on to the e2 pawn. There's no trick with rook d1, you just take it. So there is a knight check or a knight check possibly, or an attack on the bishop. Where's the bishop go? It does let the check happen. You have to obviously be careful though. But let's see, does the king simply go back to b2? Probably b2, let's see. Yeah, well now he has to go to b2 or b3. But if he had gone to e4, I don't think it does much for him. He's still going to probably b2, and then he's just going to take the pawn back, and then pieces are coming. But ultimately, you'll see the better bishop over the knight. Everything's sort of going to get better. King placement's very important too. You'll see this. But now it's not only a pawn, it's a pawn majority that could become a passed pawn pretty easily. Keep it tight. Oh, he gets a check in, but it's fine because you're still going to move your king and you're going to take e2 and cover the second rank. He attacks this. He actually does have what seems to be a fork that gets the pawn back, but no, it doesn't. It doesn't get it back because bishop takes, hits the knight. So now we're up a pawn.
Couldn't you
Right.
play rook e to check?
Rook where? Check here.
Rook d2 check.
Yeah, I mentioned that, but I don't think it does anything because you're going to take e2 and challenge the rook anyway. He doesn't have any good knight moves, right? It's whatever, just do this. And I'm sure he'd be happy with the end game with a very nice bishop versus knight and an extra pawn. That's a pretty easy win.
Yeah.
So yeah, he doesn't do that. He tries to hold on to the rook, but yeah, but now you're nice and tight. Take back, hit the knight, and then he hits the knight again, and you can just see the looseness. That's another thing about a knight. Now the knight generally doesn't like it in an endgame where there are pawns on both sides of the board, especially if it doesn't have an outpost. So knight's floating around, unmoored here, and then he plays a nice tightening move, h3, just secure everything, and he's happy. He's just
That's
up.
the
He's up.
only move that keeps.
He's
the
up a
pawn.
pawn with the. He's still up a pawn with the bishop. It's the only move here.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. There's no need to.
I mean,
rush.
apart from rook a1, if you want to count that as a move.
Yeah, but right. Oh, then yeah, but maybe. So if you have check, you can't go knight b7 because bishop f3, and you take here. Yeah, no need to trade pawns though. We want to preserve those pawns on the king side. If anything, he's going to actually liquidate. What he does, he actually liquidates here on the queen side. Then he runs. By the time that black deals with that, white can run to the king side. So he wins on the king side in a very interesting way. Like I said, there's that puzzle.
Hey, why
That's
didn't you
all.
take the pawn?
Why not?
Oh no.
Yeah, then he
no,
has
no,
rook
no,
e2
no.
check. Then it's an exchange again. We don't need that exchange. We do it on our terms, right?
Yeah. I'm
Yeah, once you saw it.
still kind of sleepy.
And the thing is, before you rush your pawns too much, you need to have optimal piece placement. You're not just going to rush them forward with your king on b1 or something. So improve your king placement whenever you can. Now he's swinging to the a file. Why not? We just have to always watch out for the g2 pawn. But as we can see, we have better pawn structure where we have two connected. Not two connected. We're going to create a passed pawn anytime we want. And we have a really nice bishop. It's restraining the knight right now. Can't really enter the rook and pawn angle. I don't think so. Well, first of all, if you trade now, you have rook check, skewering, picking up the g pawn. But yeah, you don't want the knight versus bishop for black, and you also don't want the rook versus rook. So you may as well just keep as many pieces as you can and hope that white slips up. But of course, Fischer's not going to slip up. He actually comes what seems to the untrained eye. It's a tricky endgame. But to anyone who's not an endgame aficionado, it seems like black is barely holding on at the end, but he's not. But it's important to understand. So this pawn actually becomes loose, interestingly.
I mean, like you could say that it's a strength. It's a passer. I mean,
No, what I'm saying is, yeah, you can have a passed pawn that falls though, like black's d pawn. No, it's an asset.
yeah.
Well, it becomes loose, like he ends up losing it. But then we have the
Oh.
other. It's going back to your fundamental concept in a bare bones king and pawn endgame. You'll see that we can draw from.
Yeah.
Okay, so now again, but you can see continually the bishop is restraining the knight.
Yeah, but you can look at white's position, and that's just.
I didn't hear the last word, but I know White's position is awesome, basically. He said White's position. No, even if you lose, what was the last thing you said?
Yeah.
White's position is what?
Crushing, like
Yeah,
dominating.
something very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
but again, you have to be precise because you are pretty much dropping. In many cases, you're just dropping this pawn. I mean, I suppose you can check, but then he goes back and he still has to deal with the G pawn. You can't really. You have to bring the rook back to do. So it's problematic. So ultimately, no, but it's tricky. It's tricky because he is losing the C pawn. So you have to verify that works because then we have equal pawns again. But we come back to a situation where your positioning is so much better that it doesn't really, the pawns don't matter. It matters where everything is to ultimately be able to promote. His connection's your connection's getting kind of staticky. It's lagging. Maybe go by the Wi-Fi. I don't know. It's lagging right now. Okay,
Mine.
yeah, it's, yeah, see if you go, yeah, it's really laggy, right?
Are you talking about me?
Yeah, your connection's very laggy, right? Like it's kind of like
Yeah,
staccato.
actually not at home, so not bad.
Okay. Yeah, it's not the, I'll let you know if I can't hear you.
Wait, this was played in Canada?
Yeah, I was in Vancouver, right? Yeah.
Oh.
In neutral territory, sort of neutral territory, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, more so, probably more so, no, more so favoring US, but yeah, but I guess somewhat neutral.
neutral.
What's that? Or just type it in, yeah, Uday, it's breaking up too much.
Yeah,
Just
like
type-
I didn't think that.
Or at least third party,
Yeah,
third country.
like, I don't think
Um,
that Canada had a great chess.
Yeah, let's see what happens.
Yeah, I don't know. Just, yeah, I mean, the people have done matches there. Yeah, there have been some matches that have taken place in multiple locations, like New York and stuff. Sometimes they'll do it in Canada too. But anyways, no, it's not the biggest chess country, I think, but they got some chess culture they're developing. Okay, so HB3. So here's the thing, he's giving him that pawn on C5. Why does he do it though? I mean, again, like he didn't have to, I assume he kind of knew it was going to happen. Like he didn't have to give him that pawn. Right, he could have done it. He could have kept building, but why? Okay, so it's important to understand that why does he just give away? It's like, oh no, I lost my pawn. Can I still win? But why do you think he lets him? Why do you think he lets him take the pawn?
Because his knight is now stranded. Like knights take a long time to get back to the other side of the board. But his
Here's
bishop
a few.
can
I mean,
go there.
White's not winning any pawns yet, though. Then I could come back and it's hard though because the bishop is doing such a good job dominating it. But maybe it can go to like, D6 to F5 or something, 2 moves it can help out. But there's another factor. What else is not? Why else is this problematic? Why is the king side so? Ultimately it becomes everything becomes isolated on the king side. The play is isolated here now, essentially. That's where White's going to win. So why is it beneficial for Fischer?
Definitely the king maybe is better placed.
Yeah, exactly. Then now the knight, yeah, it's both. Because the knight is certainly not as good as the bishop, even though interestingly the knights prefer pawns on one side of the board generally. But still the bishop can kind of dominate it because it's such an open game. It can't really be attached to anything. Maybe F6, but that's about it. And it can't quite get to F6 anytime soon. It's so loose. In the meantime, the king starts bothering the rook, and our rook starts swinging, and he has to worry about forks and stuff. But his king placement, that's really going to hurt him. As you said, Nikki, and Uday, you were saying that too, the king?
Isn't he just winning a pawn like king F5, bishop D1?
King F4 and then bishop D1?
Yeah, sorry, king F4. Oh wait, no. King F4.
It might be, yeah. It might be simply winning it back 4. He does win it back, I think. It might be that it's just forced. I know, well, but whether or not you calculate it being, whether or not you can calculate that it's forced, it's strong though. You could just sense that you have 3 pieces coming over here. He has only the rook basically. So you kind of know by the power of your numbers there, you're going to get something out of it. But yeah, Uday, what were you looking at?
Rook G6, rook F6.
Rook G6 to F6 right now?
No, like he can save the pawn. So king F4, rook G6, bishop D1.
Oh, no, but then if he goes rook F6, you have king G5.
No, rook H6.
Oh, H6. Yeah, but then eventually we'll probably get our rook there and win.
Like, obviously.
No, we'll gang up on it. We'll just gang up on it with our bishop / rook. Yeah, we're gonna get the rook on the. Yeah, we'll get it. We're gonna get the pawn.
Yeah, here bishop F7 looks tempting, but it loses a piece.
Right, and then not that way. This way.
Yeah.
Yeah, as he was saying, Uday was saying, you don't want to go here and get forked. Oh, now we might be losing. But then we attack the pawn. That's annoying. The rook currently has to keep guarding G2. But but the H4 pawn is in big trouble. What's that?
I've got an idea. What about bishop H5?
Probably similar, because the point is you're going to face the rook away. Well, I suppose you can go. Well, here's the thing about king F5.
Oh yeah, rook.
It might create opportunities for the rook to work on the 4th ring to just pick off. I mean, you might need bishop F3. I mean, it would be natural to play bishop F3 at some point. Then I can bother you. See, knight could come bother us though. But imagine we trade off knight and bishop. That should be pretty easy win because this king is just way out of play. We can gang up on one of the pawns. We start to win the pawns most likely. We have to be careful, but a rook and pawn endgame very likely is winning just because the placement of the Taimanov's king. There you go. That's what he did actually, because the check wouldn't have helped him. He would have just gone king g5, and he has to go back anyway. But it just wastes some moves. May as well rook f6. Now he's tied down to it, but you could kind of just sense it. This pawn is very hard to hold. So he effectively traded the c pawn for the h pawn, but it's also piece placement. Okay, keeps the knight at bay. Every move is keeping the knight. Whenever he has a chance, the bishop's keeping the knight at bay. Gets the check in. He just keeps on hanging out there. Now, what if there's another knight check? Okay, he attacks him this way, and again, he's probably fine with the check. He will likely, or maybe he'll go back to g5. You have to. No, he probably doesn't trade yet, but because the rook will cover the g5. Okay, check. Now, interestingly, here he goes. He keeps on making these like indirect trades, like you attack me, I attack you somewhere else. Tit for tat, right?
Mhm.
So he doesn't want to take, again, that's the evaluation that the rook endgame is losing. You guys can kind of sense why it's losing.
What's losing?
That this is losing for black, which is why he didn't, pretty sure it's just losing. That's why he didn't opt to, so Fischer was fine with that. And Taimanov agreed. He's like, nope, I'm not gonna take
Yeah,
this.
I think
I'm not gonna
it's
trade.
already too
I'm not gonna
far.
trade.
I feel that it's too far away from his pawns that
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
know, you could just
it's too
orchestrate this.
far away
You
from his
just
pawns. The
orchestrate
king
this.
is
You
being
can't-
active.
He's going to be separated 3
Yeah.
files.
The king's able to shoulder his
2 files away.
pawns. I mean, the white king is able to shoulder his pawns, but the black is just too far.
Yeah, well,
With that
basically,
trade.
he'll only start to capture. He'll only move the rook away when he needs to. Basically, you could just imagine some setup. Let's say you're here, and then you just need the rook to attack the h pawn.
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah.
let's maybe go here. Gain a tempo on this pawn. You can't go here because rook g6. No, he's just going to lose the g pawn now. So you take the g pawn and then you take the h pawn, right? So yeah, he's going to lose both pawns, I think. So yeah, that's just losing. So he can't do that. But then he keeps the knight, and now the knight's getting tortured by the bishop. So check. Now he keeps it, of course, and he just does nice maneuvers. Probably multiple ways to win, but just nice clean maneuvers. And now he's trying to create a kind of Zugzwang scenario where you can't hold on to the pawns anymore. Knight's got to move. No, he just can't, because if he goes rook up, you could just discovery. I don't know about that. If you want that, you could just go ahead and at the very least go bishop to b3. Actually, you might have rook f4 if you're sure that's winning, but you can probably at the very least you can go bishop b3, chase the knight, and win g5. It's actually something similar to what happened in the game, but this is kind of interesting. I wonder if that would work. It's very interesting. It might actually work. Probably it does, because you're going to eat these pawns most likely. But that's complicated to analyze that. But somewhat similar to the game though, in that he does get the g pawn. It's kind of like the bishop b3 line actually. He does get this. So now we just have this outside pass pawn, which is actually not on the same color as the bishop. Let's say it's purely knight versus, or let's say we win the knight even. We want to have the pawn on the same color as the bishop covers in the corner, right? We want it to be on the queening square as the light square bishop, so we can promote, protect it, or kick the king out from a8, for example. So certain endgames will be drawn here, but this is ostensibly won. He won, but ostensibly theoretically won. But yeah, he just plays it really nicely. But you just keep on dominating the knight, really. And yeah, your king is cut off, but you can challenge the rook soon. Okay, as this move, now you see you can just assess that your rook is cutting off the king. Generally speaking, if your rook cuts off the king, should be a win, especially if it's not an h pawn or an a pawn. Okay, so he doesn't take it, of course. Now he goes around this way. Check, he just kicks him out. Swing. So being able to stretch out that rook, use the long line, use its long range powers. So it's kind of like a lot of maneuvers. Remember, you don't have to do anything concrete. You have to do something concrete every move. Some maneuvering, improving your positioning, kind of stretching out, making sure you don't get forked also, which is useful if you're too close. But of course, he's going to see that unless he's like in dire time pressure. Sure, he's fine. Okay, so now he's got to worry about his knight again, threatening rook check. So now this is where he assesses correctly that it's winning. Now again, you can calculate everything or know the exact theory about
Hey,
this.
what just
but
happened?
You can calculate everything, but you don't even need to, because there's one important. Well, it's tricky, but there's a fundamental endgame principle that allows this to work. Uday, what were you saying?
Like I just
See you, Matt. Thanks for
sorry, but
coming.
Bye, Matt.
I missed the past stream.
Means
I
endgame
was saying,
principle.
but basically what happened is, there's shuffling. So ultimately he does get the H pawn, but then he just needs to maneuver a bit. So he's maneuvering, and then ultimately, so it comes down to this where he's willing to trade off the rooks. So he offered a series of trades. Each trade that he offered, like earlier when he was going to trade the knight for bishop, the black king was too far away, so we knew he would win that. He started picking off the king side pawns. So a lot of this is, it's, but what I was getting at, the bare bones situation is, we know king and pawn endgame. You have an outside pass pawn. You sack the outside pass pawn, and then you win on the other side of the board. It's very similar to that. We just have a similar ingredients with the knight and the rook, or in that case, one of them gets traded off. But same concept. We trade out that pawn, and now we run over. We just have to handle it. We have some complications with the knight bothering us and trying to get a draw. But now we have a new fundamental concept. Well, it's similar, but as to why you should do it here, accept this trade or offer this trade. Why is this good? Now, obviously the knight can't take because we're going to shoulder out the king. But how do you think we could win this without trading the knight for the bishop? Because the knight's going to bother us. But what is the fundamental idea that allows white to win this still?
Is it the
See you, Lynn. Is it what? Share that.
I think I
it is,
remember. I'm not sure if it works for H pawns, but I know are the winning squares for the king G5 and H5? No, it can't be. Maybe. I don't know, but that depends on. There's no.
Well, that's for winning squares for the king. Yeah, getting at the king, right? The white king placement.
Yeah.
That's going to be critical. Yeah. So, and as I said, the bishop is not covering the corner where the pawn wants to promote. So it's it may be even harder in certain piece play, in certain placements. So yeah, ultimately though, what's the factor is the king placement. Again, same concept. That's how important it is to have this good king placement. And yeah, I'm sure Fischer didn't casually give away his c-pawn. He understood that obviously about placement. Whether or not he calculated every move, it's understanding the setups. It's like the Capablanca Tartakower game, the famous one if you look on Capablanca's chess games, where he's giving away multiple pawns, but he just knows that he wants the setup with his rook, king, and pawn deeply embedded in the opponent's territory. He doesn't really care about anything else. He can take the other, Tartakower can take the other pawns. All he cares about is this king placement, for the most part, that's to verify. But yeah, and you've liquidated, and you just have to know this is winning. Use the long range power of your bishop, gain tempos when you can. Okay, begin to push when you can. So nothing can cover. Just have to make sure, of course, that the knight can't sack. That's the goal here, is to sack the knight for the pawn. But you you restrict the knight enough that he doesn't have any forks. He has limited checks. So this is the important. Okay, obviously you have to push, otherwise he's going to take it and you're going to get a draw. Okay, very important. Now this is the puzzle. This is actually the puzzle that I saw yesterday as well. It came up. So I guess we'll finish on the puzzle and then we'll see the finish, but it's just a few moves away. So what is the move that white does? Just to show the power of the bishop in these positions.
Is the bishop f5?
King bishop f5. Any other thoughts? Anyone else? That's your vote. Anyone else have any other candidate moves?
Bishop. No, never mind.
I'm not saying it's wrong. No, I'm not gonna say the right answer, but just so you said it quickly, bishop f5. So just give everyone 30 seconds or a minute to maybe think about any other options.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's fine. You can toss it out.
I don't know if
No, but even if it's
D7
right, I'm just not
works.
gonna say, oh, you got it right away, because I want us to think through it. But no, that's no, have it out there. That's good. So we have
I
your
think
move out there.
F5. I probably would play F5, but I don't know if D7 works. I don't know if it worked or not.
So it's kind of like
D7.
more long range. So first we went with our long range maneuver. Now this is much more in your face king, right? Bishop f5, right by the king and the knight. No one can touch it, of course, based on where they are. But well, what might be the merit of? Oh, that's what happened. Yeah, but I just know it's fine to say what I just give everyone a chance to think about other options. Or
Yeah,
the
no, I
elections.
should have said go ahead.
But yeah, so bishop f5. Well, you don't want the knight to give any unpleasant checks, right? Or pretty much what it would do if it has the chance to just go back and forth between g5 and h7 and just wait there, right? As long as it could keep going back to it's very limited, because once you start pushing it, it can't get in there. Only thing it can hope to cover right now is h7. Can't even cover h6 in any way because the bishop's covering the squares where the knight would need to be on, g4 or f5. So we've given up on that. We pretty much have to hope as well. We pretty much have to hope to cover h7. So basically, we go for Zugzwang. And you can always gain tempos with the bishop. You can't gain tempos with the knight. But here, we just need this placement. So for example, here, or we can gain tempos with our king sometimes too. So the knight goes back. Okay, can we just push? We want to threaten the queen. Can we just go to h7? So do we just push, or do we do something else?
I think you pawn push.
Just push. You can't
I
touch the
think-
pawn right now. You can only
I
cover
think
h7. And now? You just have to be cautious as to when you're going to prepare h7. So now what do? You still have actually, it's the same situation, right? In the last case, it was his move when we went bishop f5. Now it is our move, and we have the pawn on h6 now. So it's slightly different, but we need to kind of continue the Zugzwang, to create a Zugzwang, force him to, make effectively it becomes a losing move because he has no defense.
King g6.
Yeah, exactly. Now we do the king move. So there's no more, there are really no effective bishop waiting moves, I think. I guess you go along here? I guess you could go along
What
here.
about bishop b1?
Yeah, you probably could wait here. Let's see.
Yeah, like
And-
what's he gonna do?
Oh, but now he has king g4. So there's no need. The point is, don't even let him go king g4. So when you stay here, you say, well, you can't move your king to cover the knight. Well, you have to move one of them, right? If you move your king, you take the knight. If you move the knight, you push the pawn.
You could triangulate with the bishop. Like,
Hmm?
for example, bishop b1, king g4, bishop c2.
No, but
king
yeah,
f5,
you can get, like I said,
bishop f5.
you could gain a tempo with it, but we're just gonna we're gonna spend more time. We don't need to. The point is, if you needed to, if you needed to, we don't need to in this position.
Yeah.
Because you're
true,
already,
true.
it's already, he could have resigned if he wanted to, but we see the finish, nice clean finish. And
Yeah,
you
but
can't-
it's like fancier style points.
right, if you said 5 points.
Style points, style.
Well, not style points if it takes you longer to win them. But no, I mean, but he's already shown some amazing style. But yeah, I mean, no, of course he has games like that too. Like actually in this tournament, in this match, there's another one with bishop versus knight, and something else very cool like that happens. But yeah, he has one more check, spite check, you might say. And he simply goes here, and it's the same thing. It's actually the same thing on the other side. He still doesn't have any king moves to hold the knight. Well, he obviously just, I mean, I suppose you could have gone king g7, but then you're gonna have to deal with queen versus knight, which will take you longer. So again, in this situation, this kind of position, just efficiency. And now you're gonna get a new queen for nothing, and you're gonna easily win in like 6 moves. So yeah, that was an amazing one too, huh?
Yeah, that was 2 great games.
Yeah, and that's just the beginning of it, right? And then you start breaking down your opponent's willpower begins to erode. I mean, he said something, that's what he literally said about willpower. They said like in one of those talk shows, if you heard that one where he says, well, what do you enjoy about chess or something? What's your favorite thing? He says, when I crush my opponent's will or something.
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Pretty harsh. No, but that is it. But in terms of winning, that if you're in a match with someone, you sort of want that in the sense that you have that the match is on your side, that your opponent is in a way partially given up in a sense, like conceded that, okay, you're stronger, you have this match. You know what I mean? So psychologically it's useful, but yeah, chess is brutal, Don't need to unnecessarily torture your opponent, but you are trying to win, of course. So it will help you win if psychologically if it begins to. And I feel like Carlsen did that with Nepomniachtchi. With the moment that one, was it 127 moves or was it 136?
Oh, that insane game.
136 or
Yeah.
37, right?
I feel like Nepo's better this time around psychologically, but they're not
Because he's
playing.
not
But
playing.
I think he would have gone at least, I don't know, 5.5. I'm not saying he would have won. I mean, or 6.5. Not saying he would have won, but I think Nepo is better prepared now.
Not
I
only
don't know.
that, but it's just that he doesn't have to play Magnus. Nobody can, like, no one, they can, well, like traditionally in matches, usually if you draw, you hold the title. So for Magnus, like, okay, I draw, and then I beat them in rapid. It was kind of like an extension of that. But you know, he allowed them to like do fine in the but because he knew that he didn't need to beat them in the classical. But yeah, Karyakin and Caruana both tied him in the
Yep, that's a
so it
pretty
wasn't
big
like a
gamble, bro.
dominant. It wasn't a dominant performance really. But nobody.
Yeah,
could,
no.
the point is nobody could get him. Nepo couldn't get him, but Nepo could beat everybody else. He can't touch Carlsen really. Maybe if he did better, yeah, but he still can't touch Carlsen. And Carlsen apparently didn't even care about winning anymore either. So imagine Carlsen at his peak, really, really wanting it. He wanted to maintain his title, sure, but he's like, I'm done now. But yeah, but Nepo can obviously just keeps crushing everyone else in the candidates. Okay, what were you saying?
I forgot.
I'll see you, Nikki. About Carlsen, about Nepo beating Carlsen or potentially.
Oh yeah,
I don't know.
I think like that was like a pretty big risk that he took because anything can go wrong in rapid.
Oh, you mean to
And
go
that-
for to take the draws? I mean, if he could have, that's the thing though. If you look at the dominance of certain players, I mean, Carlsen is, yeah, he's not that. I mean, he's good enough. He just ekes out those wins. And maybe again, yeah, these days it's not like everyone plays like a computer though. They come pretty close sometimes. But yeah, the defense is obviously way better. Players are more resourceful. So, but still, you would think that in a 12-game match, I think it was, that he'd at least win one of those games. He traded wins with Karyakin. Nobody won with Caruana. You think he'd at least get one of those games. I guess it was that he felt that he would rather take the risk of winning in rapid. No, the thing is that he knew that Caruana was like statistically is way more likely to beat him in rapid. So it actually wasn't that big of a risk. I think that's what it was.
Yeah, but with Nepo, he's a good fast player.
Yeah, so with Nepo, he needed to beat him. Well, I mean, they did have 5 draws, right? They did have 5 draws. But you know, and that's what I'm saying about crushing, going back to crushing his willpower or his will. That's ultimately what happened. I think psychologically,
Yeah, even
because he put
even Magnus
everything,
has-
he was already exhausted. He put everything into round 6, and then he lost. And he could have been fine if he had taken the A pawn or something, right? And then he didn't, and then he was done. Then he just collapsed.
I mean, he was winning. He was the first one to be winning.
He was the first what?
He was the first one to be winning in the game, but he lost.
To have a winning position, you said?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was complicated, but he should have just taken the A pawn, with queen or something like that, right? And then Magnus did this beautiful sack, like where he ends up with a rook and a knight for the queen, but he has a fortress. He just like maneuvers, and he has destroyed Nepo's pawns, fixed in place, starts eating them, pawns roll. So yeah, that was a nice finish. But and then a completely demoralizing game. But Nepo let it get to him. And if you let anything get to you against Magnus, so the point is that no one could get Magnus. Just no one could beat him. But you put him against anyone else, Nepo, I guess, can beat them at his best. Because he is very strong.
Magnus has this quote, like some people, he said that some people think that if your opponent plays a beautiful game, it's okay to lose. I don't. You have to be ruthless. So that's
he said, wait, he says, I don't, I what?
He said that I don't think that you have to be ruthless.
You have to be ruthless to play a beautiful game instead of what? Sorry, what's the first part?
No. Some people think that if your opponent plays a beautiful game, it's okay to lose. I don't. You have to be ruthless.
Right. And that's in contrast to what Tal said. I think, yeah, what Tal said, like, oh, the greatest day
of his life was
when Nejmetdinov beat him, right? Nejmetdinov,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Why
So,
did
maybe he was being a little too generous or facetious, but maybe not. But yeah, but you know, you have to respect the brilliancy, you know, to be a good sport. I mean, because for the love of the game, I think you have to respect the brilliancy. It's like, look, man, you got me that game, and I'm hoping I could get you the next game. But if they play brilliant, but no, I mean, obviously you want to be the one overall. You want to be the one scoring the wins and not being, you know, get it, you know. Yeah, apply. Yeah, I mean, look, if they deserve applause, they deserve applause. But obviously, then you come back and play your best and don't let it get you down, like Nepo did. Oh, what were you saying?
Yeah. So, like I think like chess in those days, like first of all, Tal was like a really old-fashioned gentleman, and chess these days is like a real cutthroat profession, much more competitive.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Yeah, more gentlemanly, I guess. But I mean, I think they get along with each other. Like I think even Magnus and I heard that, I don't know, I don't read up that much on it, but I heard that he is they were
Yeah,
friends or something.
they were
So
friends,
it's not like it's a blood. I mean, they both want to win. It doesn't matter what your relationship is with the person. Like, look, we could be friends completely. We could be best friends, but we're in the match. We're both just playing for the victory, and we want to, if nothing else, we're, like I said, for the love of the game. You just want to have the best game. You want to play the best you can. If your opponent happens to be triumphant that game, fine. But you come back and you still give it your best, and hopefully you're the one scoring more of those than them. But yeah, you know, use it against them. You absorb those skills, use it against them. Made the best man win or best person win, right? So yeah, but it's fascinating. It'd be interesting to see. He's going to play Ding in January?
I think Feb or March. Has the date been decided? It's in
Yeah,
early
yeah, I
2020.
think it's in January or February. You know, I was hoping you know, Hikaru was very off by half a game, you know, 0.5, but you know,
Yeah, I mean it's
Oh, you're saying he was
Right.
off, but he was off just behind Ding?
yeah, I mean he needed I think the final game he needed a draw and he would have been
he
playing
needed to
against
win.
Oh,
No,
I see.
in the second last game he needed to win and he needed Ding to draw, but
Yeah, it's
Ding won his
frustrating.
game and
It's very
Hikaru
frustrating for
drew.
him. Okay.
So it was decided by the end of the second last round.
Mhm.
It's very frustrating for Nakamura because like he's very strong and he even adjusted. I'm pretty sure like it seems to me that he adjusted his style because he's very much an attacking player, right? And that got him.
Yeah, and
That got him to like 2700, but he needed to but to beat the top guys you can't just attack. So and that's what we're talking about these days. Like it worked in the 1800s or whatever, right? But then the closer to more modern games, you just have to do more than pure attacks, right? I mean, he could do more, but he had to become a more complete player, I think. But he didn't quite get there, I think. And the other, it seems so. It's frustrating for him because he's really.
No, I think
close,
if
but
he
not quite
drew at round 14, had he lost to Ding, and that was it. But had he drawn to Ding, he would be in he would have gone a tiebreaker over.
No, I
Yeah,
think
he's so close.
decided
He's
by
really
round-
close to getting there, but he's not quite there yet.
Yeah, I think it was decided by round 13.
No, I have it right now in
Oh,
Wikipedia.
then I'm
He's fourth place with 7.5. Round 14 was him, Ding, and Hikaru Nakamura. Nakamura had 7.5. Ding had 7, and Timur Rajabov had 6.5. So had he just drew Ding, which he didn't, he would just he would have been playing Nipo. So it wasn't signed to round 14 because round 14 Ding had before round 14 Ding had 7, Nakamura had 7.5, and Timur had 6.5.
And
Nipo
my
had
view also,
9.
what do you think about the trajectory in general? I think you were going to say because also what I was thinking was it's like I felt like he kind of almost like I said he maybe adjusted his style, didn't quite get there, and then he got into other stuff like obviously streaming. I think he does some other some other whatever derivatives and whatever else he does. So it's some business stuff. So I felt like he kind of was like I'm down, like not really gonna really go for the title even. But I guess maybe he's still trying. But I feel like he has so many other interests. I don't know. Do you think?
Yeah. Like the thing I was impressed by was not his style switch. Like everybody does that. Even Magnus was an attacking player.
But Magnus pulled it off though. Magnus pulled it off more than Hikaru.
Yeah, but what I'm impressed by was that the fact that like he had not really played any top level classical tournaments, and then he comes and he does really well in the Grand Prix, and then he does really well in the candidates. Like I didn't expect that from him. I thought his professional career was over.
No, exactly. I thought the same thing. No, I didn't. I was surprised that he actually, after just because he's a streamer doesn't mean he can't be really strong. But as they say, bullets.
Yeah, but like I mean,
but he is focusing a lot on bullet chess.
Yeah, exactly. When you're playing that much build within a blitz, like you're out of practice, but he still came back and it did.
Well, I mean, yeah, but that doesn't mean he's not like, maybe doing some long games in training, maybe brushing up on his openings and whatnot. And obviously he's very fast. I mean, he's probably among the greatest, if not the greatest tactician and calculator among the top, I'm sure. But all of them are, all of the top guys are. But yeah, he definitely has got that down. And interestingly, I think he's not even like a math guy. He's more of a liberal arts guy. But he's obviously he's all the above, I guess. He's got the talent and everything. I guess, yeah, he just never, but maybe when he made the transition, it just didn't quite work, I guess, because he was very much an attacking player. That was what he loved. And Magnus, I wouldn't say he was just that, you know what I mean? So he had to become more of
Magnus was
a, he
always
just
more
didn't
of a-
quite become a positional player entirely. You know, I feel that's my hunch when I'm speculating a bit, but that's what it seems like based on the games I've
Yeah.
seen.
So hey, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, you said that if for the top players, you have to be more than just an attacking player. Like, what else do you need to be?
You need to
Like
be
more
everything.
specifically.
It needs to be everything, you know. You have to bring it on because the thing is, you can be everything in one tournament and get a GM norm, right? But you need to, but to really, just to become a GM, like
You need to be
for
consistent.
example, I could beat some IMs now and then, but so I know I can play at that level. But in order to have norms or to get you can get norms too if you have really good performance in one tournament.
Yeah, you
in
have
order
to
to
be
become, you have to play consistently. You have to be able to consistently. So it really, those titles and different titles are really a function of how consistent are you. You know, I mean, you have to be really good, but you have to be able to do it consistent. You mess up one game, boom, you lose to a lower player. Uh-oh, there's 30 points, there's 20 points. Now you got to climb back up. You know what I mean? So then you got to still get to, so you're at 2450. You got your norms, you got to get to 25. That's just to become a GM. Now to become a top player, yeah, I mean, you just have to be completely, it's so hard. You got to be so well-rounded, astute in every aspect of your play. You got to really know the classics and everything, be able to draw from all that. Obviously, you have to be smart with how you prepare, using the computers. So you have to bring that all together. You have to do preparation for each opponent. You have to be psychologically, you got to be on point consistently. And that's psychological, not just against your opponent, but like your mindset, but also just how you're making decisions. Like, are you making it just something very basic? Like, are you making impulsive decisions? That's psychologically, right? Are you just making quick moves when you should take your time? Are you spending too much time and getting into time pressure, right? Which I'm usually on that end. But yeah, so it's everything. You have to bring it into pretty much perfect balance. It's very painstaking. From what I mean, that's why not everyone's top 100 in the world. That's why it's so difficult to become a GM and a super GM, because you can play a brilliant game. You could beat a GM. It doesn't mean you can make it up there because you can't do it
Consistency
consistently.
is important, basically.
The what?
Basically, you're saying that consistency is important.
Yeah, it's consistency, near perfect perfection. Yeah, and then maybe not Fischer-like consistent perfection, near perfection of Fischer or Carlson. Those, that's to become the very top. But even to become a super GM, let's say, you have to have those guys are pretty flawless these days, right? Either they're flawless or you just take, but again, if you like Fischer's play may not have been 100% accurate all the time, but you got to take those risks and have a good enough intuition. And to be able to, you go for an attack. You don't have to play a perfect attack, right? It depends on the position. You're playing positionally solid chess, that has to be real tight, right? But even then, there's like GM type maneuvers. The computer might disagree with you. That's the thing. You can't just like know the computer and win, you know, not just learn from a computer, know how to win. You have to have a feel for the game. Like I said about these Fischer games, it's a flow of the game. It's an attitude about the game. You know, like certain approaches. It's a feel for these types of maneuvers, this restriction. The computer's not going to tell you that every move, right? You got to figure out that flow in the game. That's mastery. What were you saying?
Like I like Fischer games. I find them like the idea is really simple. Because when you compare them to someone like Anand, like his ideas are really complex and deep. Like I find Fischer's games easier to follow.
Well, I mean, Fischer's not the simplest. I think I would say Capablanca. I always use the example of Capablanca.
I
think he's the clean, very clean. It's like here's what I'm gonna do, guys. You go ahead, opponent. I'm gonna do this, this, and this. Try to stop. Because I'm also gonna swing. But he also swings between both sides, the left-right hook game that the opponent's left. But he does a lot of games like that, like the big V game. He's playing between two sides. He dominates when you don't know which side he's going to strike on next. So he has a little bit of unpredictability, but you know what he's doing. You know the general theme. You may not understand yet, but when you watch the game does literally speak for itself. You see the narrative of the game. The clearest, I think, in Capablanca.
That's where like I don't mean he's simple in that way that he only plays in positions. Of course, he's got deep concepts. Like if you don't, then you can't really become that good. But
right.
What I'm saying is that I've noticed in a lot of his games, he trades off like one or two pieces, simplifies the position a little bit, and then he just outplays his opponent completely. Like it looks like his opponent has no idea what they're doing.
Right, right. I mean, like even in the opening, like it seems like rather sanguine. Yeah, but
Oh,
but he just
first chess
trades so
professional.
like look at these trades, like going for a
Yeah,
queen
like-
trade. Like he just understands this queen that I'm guessing you did prep on this, but he
Yeah,
just
yeah,
understands
he
the queen because he knew his
Yeah.
opponent was he knew he was getting into this type of
he
stuff.
he was the first chess professional, like actually, because I remember Kasparov writing in his book that Fischer was possessing opening preparation 10 years ahead of his time.
Well, no, yeah, not only the first professional maybe, but he was a professional. Yeah, he was way ahead of his time. But of course, I don't know. Yeah, but it's also professionals in terms of like, did they have another job? Like we talked about Botvinnik, he had a bunch of jobs. He was a really hard worker, and he did like manual labor and
Yeah,
stuff.
he was an
And he just
engineer.
did chess whenever, and he worked until he was like in his 80s, right? Like to the
Yeah,
end.
he was
right?
an engineer too.
Right, he was an engineer, exactly, and he was,
Who are we
he was
talking
a
about?
highly esteemed engineer. So yeah, it just depends if like if you're purely or like Steinitz was a doctor, right? So it
Oh,
depends.
it's Steinitz, yeah.
Yeah, it depends whether you were doing other, I guess, professionals. Are you dedicating your career to that? I mean, I think like Tall and some others weren't they just chess players like Spassky and stuff. I'm pretty sure some of them were just chess players. But yeah, some of the Soviets probably they began to professionalize, and then Fischer just beat them at their own game, basically, without having all the like in the Queen's Gambit where the Soviets had all their people like helping him out, and then she was talking. She didn't at first, and then she was having the phone call, and they were like helping her out. But yeah, Fischer's pretty much on his own. He had like a second or whatever, right? So against the Soviets,
Hey,
that's
and,
what's
I think he
amazing.
learned Russian
Yeah, yeah.
just to
Yeah.
be able to read the
Yeah,
Russian
I think there's a
magazine.
famous game. If you look up an opening trap to remember against Reshevsky, I think the
Yeah.
story with that amazing game is that he saw that in some Soviet manual, like some book,
Yeah, I love
and
that
he was
game.
able to use that, but no Americans had seen it. So it's things like that. Yeah, he was savvy like that. But yeah, he was a very controversial guy, obviously, but yeah, brilliant at chess, amazing. And so like that's my point in terms of he's among the best, if not the best, at that peak. They say, yeah, his flame burned the brightest, went out the quickest or whatever. But yeah, amazing. It's really amazing stuff. So hopefully you guys gain something from that. Yeah, just go on his chess games. Just go on chessgames.com, click on go to Fischer chessgames.com, Google that, and then just go down and it'll have like highlighted, it'll have his matches. You just click on the match. And I love how chessgames.com organizes it. It's kind of old school, it's been around, but it's just there's a lot of great knowledge there. I hope it stays there for a while. Because I know that the founder died a few years ago. But I don't think they're really, I don't think it's as active as it used to be, but the stuff is really good that's there.
Yeah, I mean, the games are there. I like the comment section too.
Yeah, you have the kibitzers, right? Kibitzer Cafe, I see. Yeah, you have all that. And you have a certain guys like FSM or whatever, or Petrosian.
Yeah, the game
you have the
data-
same guys, like they comment on everything. These guys are on there, like they were on there, like back in 08 and stuff, like early 2000s. They were on there, every day commenting. So probably a lot of correspondence players too.
Like I wasn't around in the early 2000s, so I wouldn't know.
Oh yeah, you're younger, right, man? I'm old school now. I learned with books. I learned with books. Maybe you know. I don't know if you do. But anyway, guys.
Yeah, no, I've got books.
Oh, you have books. Okay, that's good. That's good. I mean, you don't need to, but I'm a fan of the old book.
Yeah, I've read lots and lots of I mean, I like reading books, and I find them much better than the Kindle or e-PDF.
Yeah, it gets kind of boring and sometimes, and it's nice to be able to write on the pages and whatnot and have it in front of you, or you can show it off in your library, right? Some people like to do that, but no, I don't have I have a few. I've collected some chess books. Some people just give me some boxes, most of which I just gave away. But I have a bunch. Someone gave me like a bunch of U.S. chess Life magazines. I try to give some away, but there's like a few hundred of them. So yeah, so I got saddled with some stuff. But no, someone gave me a couple boxes of books. Like the bookseller, yeah. So I just gave them like as prizes and stuff to my students. That's a fun prize to give. Yeah. But anyway, great job, guys. Hopefully, you gain from that. And by the way, I'm gonna pause. I was gonna ask about a tournament. Let me just pause it real quick. I'll stop the share. I'll pause recording. All right.
Are we good?